All right, I'd like to call to order the Brevard County Charter Review Commission. If we would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Fisher, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if we could please call the roll, that'd be great.
Robin Fisher,
Here.
Kendall Moore,
Here.
Marcia Newell, here, Mike Herodopoulos.
Here.
Marie Rogerson, here, Blaine Strettis, Bob White, Matt Nye,
Here.
Gabriel Jacobs Kirstein, here, Tom Jenkins, Cole Oliver,
Here.
Sue Schmidt, here, Jordan Chandler,
Here.
Dick Luther, absent, Dave Newman is absent.
All right, with that, we have a quorum. All right, we have the minutes before us. Is there any concerns about the minutes? Without any objection, Mr. Fisher moves that, and I second it, and it is adopted. We'll now move to reports. Why don't we go to the CRC staff first, if there's any information from them that they'd like to share with us?
No, we have no additional information for you this meeting, but there'll be some information at the next meeting for you.
Okay, great. And Mr. Googleman, why don't you share a little bit of information? I know there's some issues with the Attorney General. Let's get into that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Electronically, what was sent to you all earlier was a copy of the proposed letter to the Attorney General's office seeking an Attorney General opinion. It kind of gives the other side of the story with regard to the question regarding school board recall. They will also be getting a copy, as they've requested, of the memo that came here that gives the other side of the story, so to speak, so they can see both angles on it. I want to report to you all that what I received, I decided to go ahead and call the Attorney General's office and talk to the Division of Legal Opinions, one of their staff attorneys up there, to basically let them know that this letter was coming, that unlike a city council or a charter, or rather a county commission, we don't have an unlimited term here, and that we were hopeful that they would be able to get to the opinion in a timely way, and so they could get an answer back to us. And the first thing that happened was that the individual I talked with immediately started asking questions about, well, do you think you're really legally able to ask this question? Are you able to ask any question at all? Don't you think the county commission should send this request up there? And I told this individual, I said, no. I said, I think we're legally entitled under the state statute to do this. In fact, the Attorney General's office some years ago in the case of the Broward County Charter Review Commission gave them a formal opinion on an issue that they posed. Oh, well, we'll have to look at this further. And the next thing I know, I got a call from the county attorney, Abby Jornby, and she says, I just wanted to give you a heads up that I received a call from the AG's office, and they were asking, what is this Charter Review Commission, and who is this Paul Googleman, and what are they asking, and what's going on? And then they posed the question to Ms. Jornby, well, I'm not sure that this is even a question under the Florida Constitution or Florida statute. And of course, the question was phrased by Mr. Trettis, and it clearly uses the term, Article 8 of the Florida Constitution right in the question. So the point I wanted to tell you is that I want to make here is that for whatever reason back in the 1970s, the Attorney General's office would issue 200 or 300 formal opinions a year. And what has happened in the last 20 or so years, it isn't just this Attorney General, but the Attorney General's office is now only issuing like maybe 15 opinions a year or whatever. And there seems to be kind of a movement not to accept these opinions where they can, where they have some question about it. So we've done our best. I think Mr. Trettis is satisfied with the form of the letter. It was his motion, and I just wanted to report back to you. In any event, that's going out to the AG's office Federal Express to date.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Googleman? Okay, please.
I have a question. I'd like to commend Mr. Googleman on what I think is a very finely researched and written request.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Schmidt.
I believe at the last county commission meeting, the commissioners had a question on a particular issue that they had asked the county attorney to talk to the attorney general, and she came back at the last commission meeting explaining that the attorney general had said they were not going to deal with any charter issues and other items. So it wasn't just Mr. Googleman, it was also as far as the county commission was concerned at this point.
Okay, that's a good point, and we'll send that letter up and see where it goes. And maybe I might reach out to the Attorney General as well and just make sure that's all clear. Other items for the council. All right, as we get ready to go to the proposals, we have now, I think everyone has seen their emails box be quite busy. We now have 24. The power of a deadline has been realized here. And one of the things that we did in the last meeting is that you saw that numbers 3 and 4 were both removed from consideration. So what I'd like to do today is, obviously, this will be either public hearing number 1 or 2, depending on the item. I'd like to proactively do much like we do in the legislature and the Congress, saying if we don't have a majority of the people willing to consider, this does not obligate you to vote yes or no, but if you don't want to give further consideration to something, I would like to remove that because we only have so much time. And so the proposal I'd like to kind of move forward with is that a simple majority would vote to remove something from consideration. So in our case today, a majority would be, I guess, 6 with 11 people. So if 6 people say no to a proposal proactively, that would be removed from further consideration. So we'll do that after each one of these measures. Obviously, those folks who are sponsors of it have the opportunity to make public comments or their advocates, and then after each one of these items, we'll vote to move forward or not. So if 6 people vote to remove it from consideration, it will no longer be under consideration. Is everyone okay with that, or would you like to discuss it further? Okay, I'll take that as that we're going to go with that plan of action. And so what we have right now in front of us, of course, is Charter Cap public hearing number 2. And Mr. Tredis, you have put that forward for us. If you want to introduce that once again, and I think we have some, we do not have any appearance cards on it today, but please introduce it, and if people have questions, we can move forward from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've explained it, I think, twice, so I'll waive an explanation. If any commissioner has any questions for me, I'd be glad to try to answer them, but I think it's been explained twice.
Okay, great. Are there any questions for the sponsor? And there are no appearance cards before me. Anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on it? All right, with that, Mr. Tredis obviously wants to move forward. Is there any objection to putting this to a third public hearing? Okay, there's no objection, so it will be moved forward to public hearing number 3. All right, number 2 is the recall of school board member. It's public hearing number 2, and this is also sponsored by Mr. Tredis. Mr. Tredis, you are welcome to introduce.
Thank you. This is a recall proposal for the school board members. There's one county charter in Florida which provides for recall of school boards. That's Duval County. This proposal applies to different types of elections, whether it's partisan or nonpartisan. We have nonpartisan school board elections now, whether it's district-wide, i.e. county-wide, or by residence area. So it applies to any of those situations. It tracks the Florida statute on recall of county commissioners and city council. With some exceptions, it does away with some of the reasons under the statute, and in its place puts up to 3 votes by the school board, with the petition having a recital of the motion and how the school board member who is sought to be recalled voted on those motions. So it's substantively different. It basically allows the electors to recall, or at least attempt to recall, a school board member because of their policy decisions. I believe it's necessary for some recent policy decisions of the school board. One thing I additionally wanted to point out, because I think this has been explained a couple of times as well, but there's only one additional thing I'd like to add, and that is regarding the cost. I'm quite sure that elections are very expensive. However, this recall process takes from 195 to 225 days. So, for example, if this recall proposal were to pass and become part of the charter, if it were in effect now, for example, hypothetically, April 1st of this year would have been 218 days approximately before the November 8th election, which means if a group who wants to recall or try to recall a school board member times it correctly, that it would not cost Brevard County any additional money because the proposal would become part of the November ballot. So that hasn't been pointed out before, and I think that would be a really important reason for people who are interested in trying to recall a school board member to time it as such, because that would be a very important reason for someone to perhaps sign a petition or not sign a petition if it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars if it's not timed like this. So that point hasn't been made, but I know commissioners in the past have expressed how much it could cost, and I would submit that that would eliminate the cost addition. That's the only comments I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions?
I just have one.
Mr. Smith, for a question, sure.
In your proposal on page 2 of 7 for the grounds for recall, would you consider amending that to state what the statute is concerning counties and municipalities, especially since Mr. Gugelman has given this group, this board, information concerning recall, and in fact even section 8 and 8.1.
I wouldn't consider changing it. I think if you're referring to the 3 vote of the school board members, or up to 3 votes on particular motions, I think that's really the most important part of it. If you're talking about adding reasons that track the statute, I would not be willing to do that, because those other reasons are very vague, such as misfeasance, negligence, or neglect of duty, drunkenness.
And yes, and it continues, but it's set up by state statute what those reasons are.
Right.
And that, in fact, is in our charter right now, that if there's recall for, say, the county commission, it sets out that it has to be by general law. Right. And general law sets out what those reasons are, versus this, you could, a school board, any school board, whatever, whoever it is, could make a decision to vote for changing the carpets in a school, and somebody could be recalled because it's a policy change. I prefer to go by Florida law, and that's why I was asking if you would amend that.
No, I wouldn't, because I've also looked at some of the appellate decisions regarding the recall statute for county commissioners, and it all gets tied up in litigation. Sometimes it's often successful litigation because misfeasance, that's very vague in general, and a court will strike it down. And same thing for the other ones, drunkenness and all these other really archaic reasons. So I really think this is the most important part of it, really, is that it allows the electorate to recall a school board member because of the decisions they've made. And as I said before, I don't think it really can wait for up to 4 years to make these changes when the health and welfare of children are impacted so much by school board member decisions.
Other questions? All right, seeing no other questions, we do have a few comments before we finish up the conversation on it. We have Matthew Woodside from Merritt Island. And we'll allocate each speaker for 3 minutes, and if there are questions from the commissioners, we'll, of course, keep that conversation going. Welcome, Mr. Woodside.
Sorry, I wasn't ready to speak. Can I start over? I wasn't ready to speak.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Matthew Woodside, and I've been an educator with Brevard Public Schools for the last 15 years. I came today to shed light on some specific policies in our district and how those policies are manifesting in our public schools. What some don't know is that our school board has enacted policies allowing for students to access restrooms and locker rooms of the opposite sex when they choose. And as an educator on the inside, I'm here to tell this committee and anyone else who will listen that students are taking advantage of these policies across our district daily. In my school, boys and girls have used the opposite sex's restroom on a daily basis all year long. I've witnessed it with my own eyes. My administration has confirmed they're aware, and they say that they're just following policy. When I initially voiced my concern and vowed to never let it happen on my watch, I was given this official notice on BPS letterhead stating that I would face disciplinary action if I prevented students from using restrooms or locker rooms of the opposite sex, and I brought copies for everyone on the commission and for the official record. Many teachers across our district are allowing these policies to manifest on their campus, not yet willing to speak up publicly because of the threat against their employment. But many speak to me privately about issues taking place in the campus because of my public stance against these policies. Recently, a teacher in our district reached out to me to tell me of an incident of deep concern, which I spoke at our last board meeting on this past Tuesday. This male PE teacher on duty felt compelled by our policies to allow a female student identifying as a male into his male locker room to change her clothes with the other male students. She entered, took her shirt off, and as the male students and male PE teacher witnessed, this female student was wearing no undergarments under her shirt. This female student was naked from the waist up in front of her male classmates and male PE teacher. Our board has enacted policies that are forcing teachers to be in the presence of nude minors of the opposite sex and expose our students to the same, under threat of losing our jobs. This is considered criminal in any other context, and yet it's happening in Brevard County. And regardless of what anybody else says, including Mrs. Belford and her colleagues, our board is under no legal obligation to let this happen. Restroom use is based on a court case currently being appealed in federal court that will most likely be overturned. And regarding locker rooms, our county repeatedly has said they're just following federal law, except they're not. There is no federal law requiring schools to allow transgenders students to use locker rooms of their choosing. St. Johns County cites this fact in their guidance on these issues, and I brought copies of that as well. I'd love to go into more detail on these issues, including how this all started with Ms. Belford in 2016, details on specific scenarios on my campus, on campuses across the county, including one where boys in a school were just girls for a day so they could go into the girls' restroom with girls inside, girls screaming. Terrible situations. One just happened in Titusville High School. But the stories are coming out more and more, but I wanted to at least let everyone know that this is happening in your county. And it is expressly because of the decisions of a few board members, not any state or federal law. Thank you.
Sir, what board do you have?
I'm at Andrew Jackson Middle School in Titusville. Yeah.
Mr. Nye for a question.
So thank you for
Yeah.
giving that information. Is there any sort of tracking? I know you mentioned there was kind of essentially you're being prohibited from.
Sure.
Like, is there any tracking going on so there's data to show
No,
how
there's
frequent?
not, because I think there's not because they're operating in the dark, because the less parents know, the better, because parents are starting to know, and parents are starting to raise a fuss. And what I proposed at the last school board meeting previous to this one was a new policy, much like our COVID policy, which required schools to notify parents the day of that a kid tested positive for COVID. They sent out a school-wide email letting them know somebody in your school, Unanimous, tested positive. Yet, when we have these scenarios happen, there's zero communication to parents. Parents have no idea. These kids in that locker room, their parents had no idea. They gave no permission. And they still wouldn't know unless kids went home and told their parents. And so there is no tracking because there is no initiative on that part by our school board. Yeah.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Richardson, for question.
Sorry, just a follow-up question. Is it also the policy of BPS that if you were to speak to one of their parents, you could not inform them?
So I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. I've called legal. I'm looking for the answer to that because separate issue, pronoun situation, name situation. We had a teacher in our district who wanted to notify the parents because the kid wanted to go by a different pronoun and name. And the teacher told the kid, well, just let me make sure I've got your parents' permission. That way, I'm not lying to your parent when I refer to you when we have conversations. And it was circled back from the guidance counselor to the assistant principal who emailed him back, do not email that parent. Do not make that contact. And so if, we are not allowed to talk about pronouns, one could assume something more abrasive as this wouldn't be frowned on as well. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Trent, for a question?
Thank you, Mr. Woodside, for
Yep.
having the courage to say what you're saying and what's going on in our school system and in the schools. I wanted to ask you, have you seen instances where kids are really not transgender? They're really just taking advantage of this situation because they know that they'll suffer no penalties and they can get away with whatever they want to do?
Sure. At my school, not so much that, I'll be honest. A lot of it is there's a lot of confusion. A lot of kids are struggling with who they are. A lot of identity crisis, and not just in these kids, but in every kid in middle school. And so, but I have heard from trusted teachers across our district who used to teach at my school that this happened at her school, and the bathroom was right next to her classroom, and there were boys going into that restroom, identifying as a girl for that day, knowing it was a joke, with girls inside. She was hearing girls scream from her classroom, and she was told there's nothing we can do. The dean told her there's nothing we can do. And so luckily for them, I think they held a county meeting. Some parents showed up, and they came up with a third option where kids will have a private bathroom to use instead of going into the other bathroom. But the problem with that is that's exactly what Adams versus St. Johns County was about, right? The girl was given the third-party bathroom, but that wasn't enough. She wanted to use the boys' bathroom. State sided with Adams, and now that's the court that's the court case that our Brevard County is leaning on, but that's in a federal appeals court right now. So,
Stress for follow-up.
I'm looking at the transgender policy, which is a one-page policy by the Brevard Public Schools, and it has number 8, which is called Action Pride. And it says, quote, all faculty, staff, and students are afforded the same rights and protections under district, state, and federal policy. It is imperative that students, school staff, and other adults feel safe, included, and empowered on our school campuses and at school-related events and functions, end quote. So is this policy, to your belief, does it apply to teachers so that if a man said that he identified as a woman, that he could go into a children's bathroom at a Brevard public school?
I would challenge somebody to say that it doesn't, because how could it not? And so that's the point. And so it hasn't happened yet, but this is what we warned against in 2016 when they changed the policy language. They changed our anti-harassment language from harassment to discrimination, and they added the qualifier based on gender identity. And many of us went before the board many times and warned them, this will result in bathroom and locker room use. This has happened before, right? Outside groups have come in and used this as the conduit for this to happen. And Mrs. Belford, who was on the board at the time, along with a couple of her colleagues, Mr. Ziegler, and I forget the other individual, basically kind of condescendingly laughed at us, told us we were misguided, uneducated about the purpose and the limitations. The purpose was to provide safety for all of our kids, and the limitations it would never result in locker room bathroom use, never. And they were wrong on both counts. As we've seen, you're endangering all of our kids, and it is exactly resulting in locker room and bathroom use. And when I say no to it, I've had many conversations with my administration, and I've told them, you're going to have to fire me. And if that's the case, so be it. Because over my dead body, I'm the one. See, here's the problem, and I'm sorry I get a little heated about this. I'm the one that has to open the door for these kids. I'm the one that has to say, here you go. For a girl to go into a restroom or a locker room with 50 middle school boys, or vice versa. We had that scenario at my school, and luckily the parents weren't on board, because if they were, that boy could have gone into that girl's locker room with 50 girls, dropping his pants, just like this scenario. I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm telling everybody in this room. This might sound harsh. Look at me. That is not loving. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to say no. And when it's not for the good of these kids, let's stop being politically expedient. Let's stop being cowards and call things what it is. And I'm sorry, I get a little heated. I apologize.
2 questions I have for you. One is, usually when there's, I would imagine you're not the only teacher who has some concerns about this.
Yep.
and the ambiguity of the law and the application of the law. Usually a teachers' union would step in and make comments to support their fellow teachers. Have you spoken with the union about this?
No, I'm not part of the union. So
Okay.
I don't.
Have they taken any interest in
No,
this?
nobody has. That's the problem. Not one school board member has reached out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Not one union member has reached out to me. My administration has not talked to me. Hopefully, parents are going to start waking up, but no, I've had nobody reach out. I've spoken on this numerous times. I've been interviewed by NBC, Kate Snow. I've been trying to let people know
Okay.
this is happening. So
And the second part of it is when you, I guess the school board is leading on this Adams decision, as you're saying?
yes, sir.
And their fear is that these people who want to, whatever, go in these different bathrooms would sue this school district if
Sure.
you did not follow. That's what they're falling back
From
on?
what I understand, yes, they are saying we are just following, we are forced into this position, but they opened the door with the language change. And so, but that position, like I said, that court case is, and I'm not a legal scholar, from what I understand, are court cases that are in federal appeals court. The decision stayed while they're in appeals court. And if that's the case, then, that ruling doesn't even apply. So again, that's for you legal experts.
And
So-
I guess one last one would be, again, you're implying, and I don't follow this as closely, obviously, as you do, but you're implying that the school board members support this Adams decision. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. And has there been, I mean, we all live under the sunshine, even this group. The idea, who has been lobbying the school board on the behalf to keep this policy that seems to be very controversial?
Well, it's I mean, culture, right? I mean, I think part of the fear is, as we've seen, that anybody comes out against this is looked at like a bigot and a villain. And I understand that a lot of people, maybe even in this room, might look at me like that, but I apologize that you're misguided. I'm not a bigot or a villain. I don't hate these kids. It's precisely because I love them that I'm speaking,
Okay, I
and
understand.
including those transgender
Sure.
kids. So,
Mr. Nye for a question.
yeah.
So you mentioned they opened the door with the policy from several years ago under some prior school board members. Is it possible to just unwind that by changing that verbiage, or is that horse already left the barn, so to speak?
Well, I don't know about all that, but I do know that when, like I said, St. Johns County has explicitly enumerated their policies. And like I said, locker room, under Florida law, under locker rooms quote, it says, there is no specific federal or Florida state law that requires schools to allow transgender student access to the locker room corresponding to their consistently asserted transgender identity. And then they've got their best practices next to it saying, we don't allow it. So a document like this could be formed allowing changes.
All right,
Yes.
let's go one last question. Go ahead, Mr. Trez.
I wanted to say that you are correct that the Adams decision, there's no mandate ever been issued. It's not final. There was oral argument in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals on February 22nd. So there is no federal decision which requires this policy, the Brevard Public Schools. And the ironic thing is that this policy of the Brevard Public Schools is actually inviting lawsuits. There's a lawsuit pending in federal court in Tallahassee for the reason that a child's parent was not told about that child trying to transition while at school. And the plaintiff is suing because the school did not inform the parent of these facts. And this is exactly the confidential identity action 7 in the transgender policy of the Brevard Public Schools, which you already ran into, which prevents you from notifying a parent of a child who says they're transgender and wants to use different bathrooms of the different sex. So they're misguided in that, and I just wanted to point that out.
Well, thank you, Mr. Woodside, for coming in. Appreciate your
guys.
time, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, next we have Pamela from Melbourne. Castellana. Welcome back.
Sorry?
Welcome back.
Thank you. I hope you guys didn't miss me too much last month. So here I am again. And as this is the final reading for this proposal, I will say for the...
We have a couple more, so we have one more next time as
Oh,
well.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought this was a third. I apologize.
I know.
Misunderstood. I don't oppose the idea of making elected officials as school board members available for recall. I want to make sure, if you've missed my emails and all of my comments, that I do not oppose that general idea. All elected officials should be held to the same standard, including the public defender, who is not. The hypocrisy of this proposal, however, is mind-boggling, and it's an emotional topic. I get that. Mr. Tredis is adding one office to this policy, but not his own. Furthermore, he would make 5 elected officials in our entire state eligible for recall because of their policies. That is what an election is for, not a recall election. Finally, his very reasoning is flawed. You keep referring to policies by the school board. Those guidelines are not a policy. They weren't voted on by any members of our school board. They are guidelines that were put in place to allow our teachers and staff and administrators guidance on how to follow federal anti-discrimination law. Those guidelines were put in place with 4 of the current school board members serving on the school board when they were put in place. That's Matt Susan, Katie Campbell, Misty Belford, and Cheryl McDougall. They were on the board at the time that those guidelines were put in place, as was now former school board member Tina Deskovich. They're not a policy, so they don't even back up your argument that you should be able to recall a school board member based on policy. They are guidelines, not a policy. They weren't voted on. If you aren't happy with federal law, perhaps you should elect better federal representation. This is federal anti-discrimination law, and our state constitution grants every natural person, not every adult over 18, every natural person has the right to be let alone and free from government intrusion into the person's private life, except as otherwise provided within. That's why teachers are not allowed to betray their students' privacy by telling their parents, I don't know if I like it, I don't know if you like it, but that's our Florida state constitution, and that's where this lies. Surprised that I'm having to say all of this again. We are currently in several Title IX lawsuits with our current guidelines in place. I can't imagine what we'll be dealing with without them in place. The teachers and staff were begging for guidelines because each school was handling this on an individual basis. Just like the current uproar about books and libraries, that each school should not be dealing with it themselves. They wanted a countywide policy. These guidelines were created so that every school in our county had official countywide guidelines that they could follow to provide for federal anti-discrimination law. Any questions?
Other questions? Mr. Trettis for a question.
I want to first comment on your reference to public defender not being subject to recall. Public defenders, state attorneys are state constitutional officers under Article 5 of the state constitution. The county charter could not do anything about a recall of a state constitutional officer, just like the county charter couldn't try to remove a state legislature or the governor, okay? So that's why state attorney and public defenders cannot be affected by a recall proposal in the county charter. But just for the sake of argument, I would suggest that you and others who would like to try to recall state attorneys and public defenders amend the Constitution to do that, because I think it's actually very important that the voters have that ability because, for example, in California, where there is the ability to recall district attorneys, both the state attorney, the district attorney in San Francisco and Los Angeles are now up for recall because their George Soros-funded liberal Democrat district attorneys have ruined those cities by not enforcing the law. And those voters have the ability to recall. So I would encourage you to try to get the Florida Constitution changed so that district attorneys and public defenders can be recalled. The second thing I wanted to mention to you is that although the transgender policy of the Brevard Public School System may not have been voted on, it is certainly, as an existing school board member, is certainly capable right now, next week at a school board meeting, of making a motion to repeal this transgender policy, okay?
Guideline.
And that's how this recall provision can be used. By getting a school board member to make that motion, a transcript will be had of it, and they will have to vote on it and go on record. So I agree with you that no school board member has had the guts to recall this transgender policy. Finally, I'd like to point out that you keep citing federal anti-discriminatory law. Federal laws are in the United States Code. It's like Florida statutes, but it's United States Code section. So I'd like you to tell me what United States Code section requires Brevard Public Schools to order teachers to not inform parents that their child is trying to transition their gender while at school. What United States Code says that?
Actually, I didn't say that was in United States Code. I said that is in our Florida State Constitution, where it says every natural person has the right to be left alone and free from governmental intrusion into the person's private life except as otherwise provided.
You repeatedly said federal anti-discriminatory statutes.
That's a different, that was
Well, I want you to cite the law. Since you say that's the law, I want you to cite the law to me.
I'm not going to cite the law, Mr.
Because
Travis.
there is no
I can't do
law.
that.
The previous
There is a
speaker
law.
was
The
correct.
anti-discrimination law from 1972 absolutely exists. You wonder why I get into the argument with this guy. You're going to let him bully me, and when I try to answer...
You cut me off every time. You
All
just
right,
cut me off.
so you both are having, let's just take it down a notch and let the question finish. And as usual, I always give the opportunity to answer. Okay?
So you
I can't
cannot,
cite the law.
okay, because it's not the law, and the previous speaker was correct. It is not in the federal statutes. That's all.
Any other
My
questions?
inability to cite federal law does not mean it doesn't exist.
Well,
I also can't cite the law that tells me I can't speed on the highway, but I know it exists.
Okay, well, I would imagine, my only 2 cents would be that we have one more meeting, and if you could find that out within the next, however long we have the next meeting, that'd be great. If not, so be
It
it.
still does, thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Adopoulos. It still doesn't change the idea that your whole premise for wanting to recall school members is based on fallacy. You're saying, and you want 5 people in our entire state to be recallable based on policy. That's retribution politics at its worst. You won't have school board members making decisions that's in the best interest of their students. You'll having school board members making the decisions based on what's going to keep them in office. And that's, I don't understand why you think 5 people in our entire state should be held to a different standard than any other recallable office. Do put them on the recall list, absolutely. I do not have a problem with that. I'd love to be able to recall the one that lied on the first day of school from the dais in the school board meeting. But you can't make it based on a different standard than any other office held in our state. I mean, you can. You can do whatever the heck you want. I just want my opinion to be put on public record that it's a bad idea.
Thanks, Ms. Castellano.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Katie Delaney. Welcome back, Ms. Delaney.
Wow. As we all know, this is a extremely emotional topic. I deal with a lot of teenagers from all across the county in what I do for work. And what I can tell you is that kids are not feeling safe at school. They're not. And there has to be some kind of compromise. And the reason why I am for being able to recall a school board member on policy is because when policies affect everybody, you know, when did women stop mattering? When did girls' safety stop mattering? The fact that a boy wearing boy clothes can go into a girl's restroom and they cannot be questioned, that's wrong. Our girls deserve to feel safe in school, and our boys do too. I'm not saying boys don't matter. Our boys do too. And you know what? The transgender kids, they deserve to feel safe at school too. But there has to be a compromise. But what we're seeing right now in the schools, there is no compromise. I regularly get called a liar by the school board on TV. And after the school board meeting, I go up to them and I show them my facts, and you know, they never apologize. They never, you know, make it right to the public. But I don't care about that. That doesn't matter. It's these people, there is no way to hold these people accountable. And when they're making policies that affect our children and their safety and their mental health, I'm for being able to recall somebody because of an unsafe policy, especially when these people, they don't want to listen to us. We have to beg them for time to speak. Katie Campbell basically told us the other day that we should be thankful for our 3 minutes. And that's how they all feel. They all feel that way. They feel that we're an annoyance. But these are our kids, and we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere, and we're not going to stop. So, thank you.
Any questions, Ms. Delaney? Thank you very much for coming in again today. All right, there are no other appearance cards on this proposal number 2. The only question I have, I know we had mentioned in the last meeting about potential costs for a recall. Have we received anything yet from Lori Scott's office yet?
No, I'm working on that, and you'll have that at your next meeting.
Okay, great. The only other issue that came up, we're going to be handling number 18. I know Vic is not here today, and he has that proposal dealing with recall where I think would apply to everyone. And he cites as the example that it's been done in Columbia, Duval, and Sarasota. I think that's from our notes as well. Mr. Tredis, did you have an opinion on number 18? Did you want to keep them separate? Did you want to fold them together? I mean, what's kind of your take? This is your amendment. You can do as you wish. I just wanted to bring that to our attention so we can have a thoughtful discussion about it.
I think that Mr. Lubker's should be folded into my proposal simply for the reason that mine has strike-throughs and underlines, really. It's the same proposal, except it's just easier to read, really.
Okay. And what is your thought, and would apply to all?
It applies to all county constitutional officers now. And it was just a clerical scrivener's error in, what was the year 2010, I think it was, or whenever it was. So I'm of the opinion that there's always been a recall of Brevard County constitutional officers, and that clerical error certainly didn't eliminate it.
Yep.
But now that it's been brought to our attention that there's a clerical error, then the proposal is to correct that clerical error. That's all it is.
Okay. Any other questions on this? All right. Is there any opposition to moving forward on this item for number 3?
I'm going to lodge my opposition, Mr. Chairman. And you've created a new opportunity for us to lodge opposition today based
Sure.
upon the procedure that we've all agreed to. I actually sympathize with the teacher who came forward and may even agree with some of the policy positions. You used the word policy, Mr. Nye used the word policy, and I think if there are policy issues, they need to be taken up with that political body just as we would with any other. That's number one. Number two, we have a mechanism to deal with individuals that you don't agree with their political position. It's called an election. It already exists. 4, I agree with 2 of the issues that were raised by Sue earlier out of her concern. And last but not least, our attorney, Mr. Googleman, raised some questions as to whether or not we have the ability to even regulate in this area. So even though I may agree with some of the policy positions that are stated, amending the charter for the utilization of this purpose is one that I do not agree with. And I don't know what, Mr. Chairman, you've established as the policy or procedure today, whether that's a motion for that consideration that this be removed or however you see fit.
Well, I just say this, one, we'll have the discussion. And then at the end, if a majority of the members present choose not to go forward, a majority would need that. So if 6 people say, you know what, I don't want this to move forward, we would no longer have it under consideration.
Okay.
That's how I would see it. That everyone agree with how I interpreted earlier? Okay.
Happy to see if there are 5 others that may see it that way.
And then the second thing I would just point out, I want to ask is, to Mr. Tredis, is you mentioned it in your opening comments about when this election would take place. There would need no cost, as you mentioned, if it was during a general election. Clearly, if there's a special election countywide, it'd be pretty expensive. Or district-wide, it'd be pretty expensive. Are you open to the idea of if a recall could shorten someone's term, meaning if they're in a 4-year seat, for example, that they would be up for election again at the 2-year mark?
I would be reluctantly, but I understand that it's very expensive, and I think it actually just might make recall proposals, petitions, be more likely to succeed because of that change. So I'd be amenable to that.
Okay. And the reason I'm bringing it up is, one, because I talked to a lot of people in the community, but the sense being that one of the consistent messages we're hearing from everyone kind of is elections decide policy, right? Mm-hmm. And so if there's a concern about one or multiple members, whether it be on the school board or other positions, that maybe that our version of recall in Brevard County could be that you've got to face the voters in the next general election, even though your term is not up. That could be something that we could, again, it's just a thought, because clearly this would be one controversial, as you just brought up, Mr. Moore. The second one on the legality of it. And so if this is such an emotional issue, which it clearly is, do we create our version of recall being that they're up for election early, as opposed to having a recall who knows what the result might be, and then you'd have to have another election on top of that to elect the next person. We're going to move, I mean, I'm sorry, but that said, if we do move forward, that's something I'd like us to think about. But that said, are there 6 votes to stop this discussion today? Is anyone in support of Mr. Moore's proposal to stop this discussion today? Anyone else? That's right.
I would recommend, or I would echo a lot of the comments that Ms. Smith made. If this proposal could be revised to include the school board members to be subject to recall for the same reasons that the state statute sets forth, which has a large body of case law that has been put out there kind of defining what those terms are. I think I could get behind that, but just for a policy decision, I also echo the other comments that have been made, that I think that's what elections are for. On the policy side, it sounds like the issue that has been brought up by most of the speakers isn't even a policy that would subject anyone to recall at this stage. I'm a little concerned that this is looking for presenting a solution to a problem that's not even, available to be solved in this manner. So I would support, as it's drafted now, Mr. Moore's proposal to.
And as again, we're dealing this like kind of like a legislative matter. Anything could be amended, even if the sponsor doesn't like it, if with a majority vote. So this is why we're having this discussion. We can continue and bring all of these elements into our third reading for next time, or we can continue the debate today. It's whatever the board would like to do. Any other thoughts?
I just wanted to mention that I concur with that as well, short and sweet. That particular, I agree that recall is a good idea, and that the majority of this particular proposal is on point, but that issue of being able to, insert politics to pull somebody out or to not agree with somebody's policy is problematic for me as well.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
And
Mr. Chandler.
say I agree with the same sentiments as Ms. Schmidt,
Okay.
Mr. Moore, Mr. Oliver, and Mr. Gabriel.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would agree with them too. And also on your suggestion, I think I have a concern if it's not legal, according to Mr. Goodelman, then changing it to 2 years when you didn't have a right to change it at all anyway is probably wouldn't be legal too, I guess. So anyway, I agree with Mr. Moore.
Okay. Well, Mr. Trist, my suggestion then is that there's probably the votes to remove this if we don't adjust to what I think Ms. Schmidt's good suggestion of it's proven case law and the language that you'd like to insert in this to move forward. But it's your proposal, so please let me know what you'd like to do.
I'd be glad to. I think it's a good idea to amend the proposal to provide for an election during a regularly scheduled election to avoid the cost part. And although I think it's I don't really agree with it, I'd be glad to add all of the reasons the state law provides, but I would not be willing to remove the policy votes, because when you look at the state statute, it's misfeasance, malfeasance. There's not misfeasance, that's breaking the law. Malfeasance is not breaking the law, but doing something in an illegal or improper way. And then there's all the drunkenness and neglected duty, which, it just is not ever going to happen. So I think it's a somewhat toothless state statute. So I'd be willing to amend it in those 2 ways, but not remove the 3 vote that's in the proposal now.
Okay. Other comments?
It's not any vote to remove what?
He's not going to agree.
Yeah, I mean, I would make the motion on this if I was in position of Ms. Schmidt. I would, talking about, I think you have the votes to even though Mr. Tredis does not like it, I think you had the votes to insert your language and take Mr. Tredis's out, and you would have the votes to move forward. I think that would be.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'd love to have the procedure I think you outlined, which was in the event there are 6 votes, in that particular perspective, the proposal ultimately dies. I mean, certainly it could be reconsidered if Mr. Tredis was open to that, particular change. I think he said that he's not willing to do so.
I agree with you, Mr. Moore, and I'm just trying to talk it out so we understand what exactly we're voting for. or not. So really, it's in your hands, Ms. Schmidt. If you want to amend it, or if you just want to have an up or down vote, it's your call.
Well, first, let's amend it. I mean, I believe that because the Florida law is very specific in saying that counties and municipalities, and it also then speaks to the issue of school boards, which it does say, and even Mr. Gugelman's information that he has given us makes that very clear, that there's things we can't do according to school boards. And I do believe that section that refers to the recall should be amended to be under Florida general law. And I want to make it real clear, I happen to have 4 children. Now, they're not in school anymore, thank God. But I happen to agree with a lot of things that have been said. And I appreciate a teacher that's willing to come forward. But I also believe that we have an obligation to go by the law. And that's why I have asked for this to be changed.
Okay, so the motion on the table before Mr. Moore's vote would be to strike the Mr. Tredis's language and insert current law. Is that?
General law.
General law. Okay.
Florida general law.
Okay. All those in favor of that?
Wait, is that a motion? Because I have a discussion on that.
Sure, go ahead, Mr.
Which is
Tredis.
that this is Robert's Rules of Order, which applies here. It's my proposal. So my understanding is that I have to, because it's my proposal, agree to amending it. I've said I'm not. So it either lives or dies on a vote. Goes on or it can be voted down, but it's my proposal. I don't believe that under Robert's Rules of Order, this body can change my proposal without my agreement.
Mr. Chairman, second point of order. I think there was a pending motion. I was more than open to your ability to attempt to help Mr. Tredis to get there. And for the sake of consensus, I would agree with Ms. Schmidt's proposal, even though it was different than what I proposed. And so if this body does vote, in the direction that she sees fit, I'd be happy to join that, although not wholeheartedly agreeing. So
Sure.
not sure I agree with Mr. Tredis's, Robert's Rules perspective, because the second motion would never be alive or have been created in the first place. I think you offered a lifeline that may not be taken.
Mr. Tredis, I think they are correct. This is the legislature, even though you're a sponsor for the bill. We can amend your bill as we see fit. Under these rules that we're operating on at this point, if you don't amend this proposal, for lack of a better term, I would have guessed there's probably the votes to remove this from the order. So it's your decision. If you want to let it, the proposal die, then that's your decision. But I think you understand where the votes are at. Your decision.
Well, I think this is Robert's Rules of Order, so I don't think it can be amended by the body. I think I have to agree to it. And I've already said that I don't agree with removing the up to three votes of the school board members. I'd like to also point out that I think it's been incorrectly characterized that Mr. Gugelman says this is not according to law. If you took the time to read the letter to the Attorney General, or request for Attorney General opinion, you'd find just the opposite, that the argument was that it does comply with the Constitution and Florida law. So I wanted to make that argument, but no, I'm not willing to change the proposal to remove the up to 3 votes of the school board member as a reason for recall.
Okay.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. All right. Mr. Nye.
That just results for withdrawal.
Yeah. All right. So there are no amendments to this bill, our proposal. And so there is a motion now from Mr. Moore. Is there a second for this to be introduced? Mr. Moore's proposal to strike this from our consideration?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Fisher seconds that. All right, we'll have a vote. Those in favor of Mr. Moore's proposal to eliminate this from consideration say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Why don't we go to a vote? So why don't we call the roll? All those support Mr. Moore's motion vote yes. All those in opposition to Mr. Moore's motion vote no.
Yes.
Yes.
Mike Karadopoulos?
No.
Marie Rogerson?
No.
Blaise Tredis?
No.
Matt Nye?
No.
Gabriel Jacobs Kirstein? Cole Oliver?
Yes.
Sue Schmidt?
Yes.
Jordan Chandler?
Yes.
And that was all.
I believe it's 6-5 yes?
6, I get 6-5, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
All right, by your vote, this proposal has been removed. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Who's asking? Mr. Goldman, yeah.
This might obviate the need for the Attorney General opinion.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that.
We would seek your guidance on that.
Call federal acts.
Okay, yeah, and we'll talk about it after. That's fine.
Okay,
I
very
get it.
well.
Okay. We are not going to be taking up number 3. That's already been removed. Number 4 has already been removed. Repeal of the 3-attorney panel. It's hearing number 2. It's also by Mr. Tredis. Mr. Tredis, you're recognized on your idea.
Right, this would remove the 3-attorney review panel of proposals that are passed by this commission. And there is no other county charter that has such a proposal. I think there's conflicts of interest in this lawyer panel. I also don't think that it could possibly be done in the timeline that's available left, because if we voted approval even as early as this meeting, the county would have to hire 3 lawyers and get their decisions pretty quickly. I forget when the supervisor of elections needed these proposals back, but I think it was said in August. And I don't think there's enough time for it. And I also think it's just rather undemocratic for a 3-attorney panel to be able to defeat proposals that come out of all the work of this commission. It also has the wrong language in the charter as far as the review that these attorneys are supposed to do. It says that if it's consistent, these attorneys are supposed to say if it's consistent with state and general law and the Constitution. The actual language in the Constitution is if it's not inconsistent, and there's a difference between those. So it actually has the wrong standard. And it also doesn't require these attorneys to express what level of confidence they have in their opinion, like by the greater weight of the legal authorities or by clear and convincing weight of the legal authorities. It's completely subjective up to these 3 attorneys, how they decide. So for those reasons, I have made this proposal to strike it from the charter.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions on that? Any other concerns about it? Is everyone comfortable moving this proposal forward? I'll take that as a yes. All right, so we will move to the next item. That is item number 6. Mr. Myjack and his right to clean water. It is public hearing number 2. We have a few appearance cards on that matter. Mr. Myjack, I believe you're, there you are. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Great.
Michael Myjack, Alpine Lane, here to support the right to clean water. I think we've made our case last time. I'm really here to try to answer questions that I may have and possibly that our legal team may have, which is why I requested that perhaps at the next meeting we could have a Zoom conference call and bring in our legal team to answer any specifics that you may have with regards to clean water. But that was really what I wanted to ask.
Okay, thank you, sir.
How you'd like to propose that.
Are there questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Tredis for a question.
I'd like to commend you for the work you've done. Your intentions are good. Your materials are very well researched, and I know you have a lot of support. Everyone wants clean water. No one's against that. I would point out, though, that I give you credit for being forthright in your materials because you point out that there is a state law that contradicts directly your proposal. And that was passed in 2020 at Chapter 2020-150 Laws of Florida, where Section 403.412 Environmental Protection Act, paragraph 9A, this was added as language. Quote, a local government regulation, ordinance, code, rule, comprehensive plan, charter, or any other provision of law may not recognize or grant any legal rights to a plant, an animal, a body of water, or any other part of natural environment that is not a person or political subdivision as defined in Section 1.018, or grant such a person or political subdivision any specific rights relating to the natural environment not otherwise authorized in general law or specifically granted in the state constitution, end quote. So you point out this, and I applaud you for that. But to me, this is a direct preemption by the state legislature, and I did a little research on it, and it looks to me that this law was actually passed in response to the Orange County Charter, which apparently created a right to clean water. So the legislature saw this and specifically passed a law to prevent your proposal from becoming a part of a county charter. Do you agree with this?
No, I do not agree with it. I think what we are doing is bypassing the state preemption directly, because we have the right to declare what rights, what universal rights we wish to have. In this case, we're declaring the right of clean water, just as we would declare the right of free speech or the right to carry guns or any of the other rights in the Bill of Rights. This approach is what's outlined in our state constitution for us to modify our charter. We, the people, get to say water has a right. And if we make that right, then we can declare that and live by it. That's what gives us the toehold to hold our state accountable for the damages that they have done with their permitting authorities.
Mr. Hess for question.
I was wondering if Mr. Googleman has had a chance to look at this, and maybe he could offer his opinion if he has.
Actually, I have not. I have it under review right now. A question was raised at the last meeting. I think Mr. White raised that, and we put all of our effort into trying to get the Attorney General request done. So hopefully by the next meeting we'll have a response to you on that.
Other questions for Mr. Majak? Mr. Oliver?
Question. In the last sentence in section 571, it states that attorney's fees and cost of litigation shall be awarded to the prevailing plaintiffs. Would you be willing to change that to prevailing parties? I know that's kind of a weird situation here because the plaintiff is going to nominally be a river or a tree or whatever, and probably doesn't have the ability to pay back the other side if they win and the case proves to not be meritorious.
I think the point of that is to lay the cost of the remedy on behalf of the polluter. And if the polluter is not found to be polluting, then the cost will be borne by the person or people that brought the suit. The idea is to give us the same standing as a corporation would have in court. And so we talk about everybody having the right to sue, but the point of the matter is it's only those that actually have just cause that will make it through this process, and it won't cost the county anything.
Right, but this is specifically funding the plaintiff's attorney's fees and costs, not the remedy of fixing the pollution. That was my question.
That's beyond my scope, and that's for you guys to decide how you want this to happen. We brought forward to you the idea of clean water and ways to implement it so that you guys could decide what goes forward in Brevard County.
Other questions?
It's okay so far? I got my attorney on the line in case
great.
I have something.
Well, we appreciate you coming in, and we'll go through the list. Anyone else? Thanks again for my chat. Jim DeRocher from DeLand, Florida. Welcome to Brevard County.
Thank you. So my name's Jim DeRocher. I'm from DeLand, Florida, but I was formerly a 33-year resident in Cocoa Beach and a business owner. I had 2 businesses in Brevard County for many, many years. I'm also here as the Florida Rights of Nature Network representative. I'm the East Central Regional Director for that organization. And so anyway, but using Brevard's Home Rule Charter to benefit the greatest number of citizens, I urge you to move the right to clean water forward and ultimately vote to put it to the County Commission for placement on the 2022 ballot. The people of Brevard have a right to determine their destiny and the quality of their waterways and human ecosystems. We all know the condition of the Indian River Lagoon and other waterways in Brevard County, and the citizens have spoken loud and clear and willing to pay for it. What is important to them and their families? This one small change would have beneficial effects on people's life, health, prosperity, and future. It would have the potential to recreate lost jobs and prevent further collapse of a national estuary. The citizens of Orange County are the only Floridians which have standing in a court of law and a fundamental right to defend future damage to their waters. They're the only ones. In a bipartisan landslide, 89% of the voters approved this amendment in 2020. But 100% of the residents will benefit from the charter amendment that was passed there. As a participant in the 2020 campaign, I am here to discuss any and all of your concerns. And if I can't answer it, I'll get the answer from some of our professionals. The Orange County Right to Clean Water Charter Amendment passed on November 3rd, 2020, and took immediate effect. In the last 18 months since the inception of that new law, it has produced only 1 lawsuit total, and that case is ongoing. The other effect this amendment has likely achieved is like a holstered gun on a county sheriff. It may have prevented some of the most egregious damages to the Orange County waters because it kept things from happening. So I can start a corporation with my cell phone right here. In 15 minutes, I can start a corporation. Is it okay if I finish?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. But a corporation doesn't breathe air, doesn't have a heart, yet the corporation can bring a lawsuit and have unlimited free speech. We are just asking for this similar opportunity for the people to defend nature, which we all depend on. We all know our lakes, rivers, estuaries are in critical collapse due to unenforced state regulations and permits which allow and legalize pollution. This is a simple, no-cost solution for the lagoon.
All right, are there questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Fish for a question.
And I don't understand the law, and I don't understand the plaintiff and defendant and all that you attorneys do, but help me understand something. And I have a greater appreciation for the river than I ever had because I just recently moved on it and enjoying it greatly. But if this was passed, and let's say, give you an example, the city of Titusville had a sewage spill. A pipe busted and sewer went into the river. What does this law allow you to do?
Okay. And they did have that. They had a 7.2 million gallon spill.
And they used to dump in the river years ago too, but
right,
go ahead.
absolutely.
Okay. So I understand.
In a case like this, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just going to tell you my opinion, but I've been with this for several years. I think that a citizen would have the right to sue the city of Titusville to correct the problem and pay for the remediation of the pollution. They would not make any money out of it. But if
Okay.
they did need to call in an expert to document it, those expert fees could be awarded by the judge. And that's the part that he was talking about a minute ago, the gentleman over here.
Wouldn't the EPA make Titusville clean it up anyway?
Probably not. I mean, it happened.
Yeah, and I've seen Titusville be fined for it. I've seen, you know, and it could happen in any city, so I don't want to just pick on Titusville.
Right,
but,
right. It's just,
but, yeah,
that's
I'm
the
saying,
latest.
I've seen the municipality have to take on the responsibility of cleaning it up and mediating for it and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to figure out what this does over what the city was going to do anyway.
Well, I don't think the city didn't clean up the ponds. That all, you know, that stuff is still in the bottom of the ponds. They sucked out some of it, but they didn't take it all. And a lot of it went into the lagoon, and I don't think they did anything other than, you know, they may have gotten a small fine. I know.
So
yeah.
what would you like to see happen above the fine and them cleaning it up? Is it?
Well, I would like to see it cleaned up. I would like to see them do something to mitigate the damage that was done. 7 million gallons of pure sewage can cause a tremendous damage.
Okay. To my knowledge, I think they cleaned it up. At least that's what their officials are saying. This is my concern. As a county commissioner, I can remember trying to increase the utility fees to replace these aging sewer lines that were throughout our county.
Yes, sir. I remember you doing that.
Yeah, and took heat for it because it was a form of another tax increase is what they told me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was making those decisions, I was making it because I knew at some point there's going to be failure in the system. And this bill, and I'm trying to make sure I understand it, but if people aren't willing to tax themselves to replace sewer lines, that's going to fail at some point in time. But yet they want to have the ability to come sue the municipality because they had the breakage. That seems unfair to me. So I'm trying to figure out how to get around that scenario, because if it's just about suing, I think we all want clean water. I want, you know, clean water like the rest of us. But I also want people to take responsibility for replacing their infrastructure as it age and as it goes down the road, and can't, you know, we got habits of elected officials coming on saying, I'm never going to increase your taxes if I get in office.
Right.
You know, it never was me, but you got issues with infrastructure in this county that's old. And I just see, and then you're going to turn around and sue the municipality for not fixing the infrastructure and having the failure, but you wasn't willing to tax yourself to repair it. That's my issue with this. And if you can get me over that, that'd be great. But that's where I'm at today, is I'm not supportive of it, because until people are willing to pay their taxes and fees to replace the things that are aging, then I have a hard time with it.
Well, if you think about it this way, if the city of Titusville has to pay for the cleanup, then the people of Titusville are actually paying that, right?
Well, yeah, but
yeah, I mean, in essence, so then they would have to be willing to do that, because
then that's going to cost me money, though, because the city, those people, those residents in Titusville are going to end up having this, pay me now, pay me later. You can make that argument, but have to be sued to do it. It's not right. Do it on the front end, to me.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I think we should do things right. We wouldn't need all the regulations that we have, even at the state level, if we just did things right. But this will help to promote that. It's the holstered gun thing. If you know you're going to get fined and have to go to court, then you're going to be more inclined to do the right thing and spend the money ahead of time to correct a potential problem.
Okay.
And that's the way I see it.
Any other questions? All right, I have a quick question. Who funds this organization?
We're all volunteers.
But you're talking to a lawyer. The lawyers volunteer too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got 5 volunteer lawyers.
And as I'm just trying to understand, the bottom line is you want to have the power to sue in court, have standing.
Not us, Sue. No, we won't have anything to do with it. It'll be the citizen in Brevard County or the citizen in Volusia County if they have it. And in Orange County, we're not involved in that.
And this organization takes the belief that whatever funds are given out, there would never be any legal fees?
We would never collect any.
Who's we?
FRON, Florida Rights of Nature Network.
And who is Florida Rights of Nature Network again? Who are they?
It's a group of grassroots volunteers that came together in 2019.
And who funds them?
We fund ourselves.
Okay.
I just donated
I'm just
another $100
this is the world I live
yesterday.
in. Okay. And I think the only thing, I appreciate the back and forth because obviously we'll have a vote on this at some point. And what I've seen more often than not, when their constitutional amendments pass, it costs money, right?
Right.
What we've seen on the state side has been a cost shift, or a spend shift, I should say, where taking money out of roads or something else in order to pay for if people are unwilling to raise taxes. I mean, I think that's your point as well, right? Because that might never that tax increase might never happen because people will just cost shift.
Right.
But I appreciate you bringing these good points and your expertise.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Could I answer Mr. Treatis's question
Sure.
about the Senate Bill 712 and the preemption? We don't think that preemption is constitutional. Our lawyers don't think it's constitutional. When that comes up in a court of law, which eventually it will, we think it'll be struck down. It was added at the last minute, and it was one paragraph in a 111-page document, Senate Bill 712, and it was just slipped in there, I think because we're working on this Orange County thing. And so anyway, we don't think it's constitutional, and this has been changed. We are working around that anyway because we're not granting a right of the river, okay? We're granting a right of the citizens of Brevard County to have clean water. Very, very different thing. We're not granting rights of nature. I'd like to have rights of nature. I think a river should have rights, I do, because we depend on that river. I mean, I used to eat out of the lagoon. I lived on it for many years.
Yes, sir.
It's sad now.
Question on that. So is your take on this, that what I just read, was passed in 2021, that's a state law, and you recognize it's a state law, and it's enforceable because it's law, but you believe eventually a court will strike it down?
Yeah, it was 2020.
So if what you ask us to do is to pass this proposal, you're asking us to pass a proposal which violates state law.
No, the proposal that we presented to you is very, very different than what they're talking about. That's saying granting a right to a river or an animal or some kind of natural system. What we're talking about is granting rights to people to clean water and a healthy ecosystem.
Well,
very, very different.
I'll just point out that it reads that not a person or a political subdivision or grant such person or political subdivision any specific rights relating to the natural environment. So it applies to people. It doesn't only apply to the rights of a body of water. It gives a person the ability to sue businesses that pollute. Your proposal does that. And this statute prevents that. And don't you agree?
There's a gray area there, but I think that's the highlight of the unconstitutional part of that bill.
Well, part of the Constitution also, though, is that a county charter cannot be inconsistent with state general law. That's part of the Constitution. So when it says unconstitutional, the Constitution says that a charter government cannot violate state law or be inconsistent with it. And this is 100% inconsistent with it.
State law can violate federal law and all that. But
No, I don't have further questions.
Mr. Nye.
So I just wanted to go on record as one of the people that appeared before Commissioner Fisher back in the day about those tax increases and say that I think the way you characterized it was maybe oversimplified. And also wanted to remind the commissioner, or former commissioner, that we do have a lagoon tax, and so the residents of Brevard County apparently do have some concern about the environment. So, thanks.
They certainly do. That was amazing, passing that.
I was a pusher forward.
And I think this would be the extra tool that they need for soil to get this over the edge and bring the lagoon back.
And who are they suing in Orange County now? You mentioned one company.
It's a developer that wants to drain 115 acres, I believe, of wetlands.
Okay.
And affect 2 streams and 2 lakes.
Okay. Great.
And so it's a development. He wants to put in commercial and homes, commercial apartments, all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
1,900 acres he wants to develop, and it's mostly wetlands. A lot of it's wetlands, so it's.
And that lawsuit is holding up any development from taking place, is that right?
Certainly is right
Okay.
now.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
because, until the judge makes
Sure.
a ruling, sure.
Okay. Well, thanks for your good information. We appreciate it.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. All right, I still need to get you in a kayak.
Can I make a motion now?
I just want to make sure everyone gets their testimony, then we can go to motions, of
Okay.
course. I just want to make sure all the information is in front of us before we make any decisions. If you don't mind. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay. Warren Edwards from Vera. Welcome, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you. Actually, Dr. Edwards.
Dr. Edwards, wasn't on here. Sorry about that.
And that's not a problem. My name is Dr. Warren Edwards. I'm a dentist in Viera here, and I'm passionate about water in a lot of ways. I am a biological dentist, and I'm also trained as a naturopath, and I've done a lot of work on toxicity, which affects the human body, and the toxicity that exists all around us. And I'm also an avid water person. I own a sailboat, and I've actually sailed every body of water from Ponce Inlet to Stewart on my little boat here and there. And I'm a kayaker and a bicycler, bicycling along the river, and there's nothing worse than the smell of the river when it's funky. And we all live here. So, I see things happening, that development is just going strong. And, it just taxes the whole system. So I think that the importance of clean water can't be understated for us from a health standpoint, as well as the health of the animals and the plants. So things like the removal of glyphosate from a ban on glyphosate, which some counties and cities have been doing, I think we're going to find that, and stopping, using that now as an herbicide for our weeds, our aquatic weeds, is poisoning us. It's poisoning the whole ecosystem. So that's one thing. So I support the right to clean water, but I'm also hearing that I'm not really here to sort of debate it from a sort of a legal standpoint. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. Are there any questions for Dr. Edwards? All right, seeing none. Thanks for taking the time to visit with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have Bill DeBusk from West Melbourne. Welcome, sir.
Hey, well, good afternoon. So I'm Bill DeBusk from West Melbourne. I'd like to talk about the right to clean water and how that right would provide the citizens the right to stand up to polluters. Today, we can only watch as regulators use ineffective environmental laws that are only attempting to keep our waters clean. The current strategy is not working, and it really never has. Would you let someone dump water from a septic tank into a waterway that you fish or swim or boat in? Would you let someone contaminate your drinking water source? Well, that's what's going on right now. That's what we're doing. We're letting that happen. Nutrients from biosolids being dumped are flowing into our drinking water source, Lake Washington. Various sources of contaminants are flowing into the Inner River Lagoon where we fish and swim and boat. The Florida Air and Water Pollution Control Act, under that act, the state has issued over 23,000 pollution permits over the past 50 years. But these permits in some cases, should never have been allowed because of the damage they do to our waterway. You may assume that citizens and organizations have the right today to stop toxins from being dumped into our water, but we do not. We do not, as long as that company or industry or business that's doing it is acting in accordance with the permit that they were provided. Even if they're dumping wastewater or biosolids, if it's within the permit, they cannot be touched or sued in any current way, anyway. But there's overwhelming proof that pollution permits are being issued without enough information, without the information that they're harming our environment beyond what they think they are. One of the most current examples is dumping of biosolids around a lake south of here, Blue Cypress Lake. The dumping of biosolids there resulted in influx of nutrients, algae plume, huge fish kill-off. And today, the same nutrients from that lake are flowed up the St. Johns River into Lake Washington, and now we have this ever-occurring plumes of blue algae, toxic blue algae plumes that are very dangerous to humans. There are legal permits that allow that biosolid to be dumped. It's allowed, it's legal, but it's not right because it's causing, Melbourne drinking water to have toxins from blue algae in it, essentially. So in January this year, Brevard County Health Department issued a warning for Lake Washington. In that warning, it said, do not drink, swim, wade, use personal watercraft, water ski, boat in the waters where there's a visible plume. So they know it's harmful to humans. That came from dumping via a permit. It should never have been allowed. The right to clean water will provide a legal path to stop activities that irresponsibly degrade our waterways and infringe on the rights and interests of everyone in our county. Citizens must have the opportunity to step in and stop polluters from destroying our waterways. The citizens of Brevard County must be empowered to seek judicial rulings to stop these kind of things. Our citizens must have the right to clean water.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. DeBusk. Are there any questions for Mr. DeBusk? The only thing I would ask is, only because you brought up the example, I'm curious to your answer, is you've mentioned that a company got approval to put a certain thing into the water.
Yeah, to dump biosolids on the land, the farmland surrounding Blue Cypress.
Do you think that we would have the right, us, figuratively, this group, to sue if what they did was legal?
Yes, absolutely. Because they were issued a permit doesn't make it right. Because the Florida Department of
people look, I understand your point, but there's different eyes beholder there, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But if a company asks the government, is this legal or not? And the government says it's legal, you're allowed to do this, you still think they could be sued for that?
I think someone needs to take a look at it because it is, like I tried to paint the picture that even because it's legal, even because they got the permit from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, maybe they're underfunded. I don't know how they issue these permits and allow this to happen because it impacted our drinking water. It literally impacted the drinking water of Melbourne. Yeah. And we have no way to step in. Everybody says, well, it's legal, I guess I can do it, because FDP said it was okay, but in the end, it's probably not okay. I think we could bring evidence forward to show that that is not the right thing to do. They should not be doing that.
So would you sue the
government?
government?
Down south.
But does that mean you'd sue the government, or would you sue the company that got the okay from the government?
Whoever gave.
I'm just trying to understand what you're trying to get.
I'm not a lawyer, but I would search out for the whoever gave the permit to allow them to.
So the individual government worker you want to sue?
No, the entity. If it was the Brevard County Commissioners, if it was the FDEP.
So if the county gets sued, the taxpayers would have to pay the penalty. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not really concerned about the penalty. I'm just trying to find a way to stop it from occurring.
Okay.
I'm
just trying to follow the logic too. I'm with you. I hear you. Okay.
But if it's happening, some guys, throwing sewage in your water, you're like, hey, dude, stop that. Okay, he's standing on his land doing it. Well, I'm drinking this water. Stop.
Got it.
How do I stop that guy from doing that? I know that down south, the reason why it was dumped up here is because they stopped the dumping in South Florida because they saw that it was impeding the health of their water. So they said, I can't dump down there. I'll dump up here in Brevard County. So they dump up here in Brevard County. So I think we need a way to be able to stop that type of pollution. It's just an example, but,
Okay.
but a very good question.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'm just trying to understand like you
Yeah.
are. Thanks. All right, Laura Lee Thompson from MIMS. I think you were here last time. Welcome back. Welcome
Hi,
back, Ms. Thompson.
Laura Lee Thompson, 3550 Irwin Avenue in Mims, and I appreciate the opportunity to come back. I spent a magical morning this morning at Harbor Branch with Dr. Hanasak looking at his seagrass growing operation, and I'm happy to report that we're forming a group of 5 individual entities that are going to do serious work on trying to grow seagrass to put back in the lagoon. And so on my way home, I rode up A1A because I had a couple hours to kill. And I haven't ridden up A1A in several decades. And as I came north, I was shocked at how little public access to the beach there is south of Brevard County. And once I got to Brevard County, we have all kinds of beach access. And we have all kinds of access to the river. And that's thanks to our past leadership in the county. And I want to address the taxing issue. I think the Brevard County voters have proven time and time again that they're willing to tax themselves to clean up the environment. And it's really too bad that Commissioner Fisher was not able to get that infrastructure tax in place, but he was voted out by the other county commissioners. So we haven't had the leadership on our county commission to try to address these issues. So in the case of the blue-green algae and the biosolid dumping, the lawsuit would be against Florida DEP. It would be against the DEP itself to get them to stop issuing these kind of permits that are damaging Florida's water bodies all over the state. But, we're worried about Brevard County. None of us are lawyers. We can't really answer your questions. So Michael's original request that started this off was to ask your permission to include our lawyers at the next charter meeting so that they can address your questions. Because we're not lawyers. We don't have the ability
I think
to be
that's
able
a
to
good,
do so.
I would just say this, if it makes it out of today, we're having votes, as you know, to see if we move forward, that they would be permitted their 3 minutes, and whatever questions we might have, we'd be happy to, entertain their answers. So if they want to come, that would be fine, not a problem. I wouldn't make it a big spectacle, but I would say there'll be, 11 tonight or 15 on the next meeting. Whatever questions the commissioners might have, that'd be great to have an expert who might walk into the more detail than we've heard thus far.
Well, since we don't know exactly what your questions are, then they may waste their 3 minutes talking about something that's not going to answer your questions. But
Well, I think there's been a bunch of questions already asked in this meeting and the previous meeting, so I would take those under consideration. I think the biggest concern a lot of people have is about, I'm sorry, in your time here, has been about, who ultimately pays the cost. I mean, as you know, I think one of the things that I'm already hearing just from reverberations up here is if the government loses a case, whether it be DEP or someone else, someone's going to have to pay for it. And there'll either be a new tax or fee or money that was spent in education or healthcare or roads would have to be maneuvered over to this column to cover this lawsuit. So I think that's the thing we're always trying to, we call it the water balloon. You squeeze one area and so forth, no pun intended. So that's kind of where we're at. I think that's your point. But I don't think there'd be any objection to any from us to have your lawyers here. And as long as they're willing to ask and answer questions, that'd be fine.
and if they can't come here in person, could they do it by Zoom? Is that possible? Could that be set up?
It'd be more impactful if they're here in person.
I agree. I agree, Commissioner.
Yeah, and because then we again, we've been really consistent with this. This must be what, our 6th or 7th meeting, and if it was allowed to be zoomed in, then every proposal might say, well, we want to have the ability to have a Zoom situation, and we might be here for months.
I understand.
So I got to be careful of that too.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and they're already making me buy pizza tonight, so I don't want to be taxed further.
Okay, hopefully it's getting delivered, so in case
But
your meeting goes.
do you have any other comments? I know I kind of answered your question, but do you have any other comments you'd like to make, because I took some of your time?
I do want to comment on the Titusville sewer spill, Commissioner, and, you know, City of Titusville, the only lawsuit that would happen would be like from a concerned citizen. All we wanted them to do when they had that water drawn down in those ponds was to demuck the ponds and take the raw sewage that was sitting on the bottom of those ponds out before they allowed to fill the ponds back up with water, and they refused to do it.
Got a lot of respect for Lord Lee, so let me ask you something, Lord Lee. So they refused to do it. What were they required to do by the government agency?
They did get a lot of requirements from DEP. And, you know, the angst is that we feel that some of the dates, you know, in DEP's report that said that the sewer spill stopped on December the 19th or the 23rd are wrong. So we have heartburn over that. They did get a lot of, like they got a, well, I don't want to go into detail and waste your time. They did get a multiple page document of things that they have to do to correct the situation. But the big eyesore that still exists when you drive up US 1 and you look at those ponds that have green dying duckweed all over them because they're so full of nutrients, that's what's rubbing everybody.
Yeah, and this is my problem. You know, I remember whatever storm it was, and you could see a lot of exposed sewer lines on Riverside Drive and Indian River Avenue. And everybody knows those lines need to be replaced. And they got exposed on the storm, and you can see it, right? But the city has to take the initiative to replace those lines today, and people got to be willing to tax themselves today.
But how do you know that people aren't willing to? They've voted time and time again to tax themselves. Brevard County is the only county out of the 5-county region in the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. We are the only ones that voted to tax ourselves to clean up the river. And if the elected officials don't have the courage to even propose a tax increase, a small $5 or $10 per household, just to rake up some money to do these infrastructure changes, you'll never know. I mean, it gets stopped right from that dais right there. It's like, no, I said I wasn't going to raise taxes if I got elected, and I'm not raising your taxes, even though poop is going in the lagoon.
But being in this dais, I've also seen the audience when the issue comes up. And it's not always, let's tax myself. It's a lot of time is I pay enough taxes and it's high enough and I'm not going to pay anymore. And you need to cut here and cut here and cut here. They may have me. So that's my problem. At the end of the day,
that's what they hear. But you know, there's a bunch of us out. You know,
I know. You've always been willing to do your part.
You're hearing from the minority that doesn't want to pay taxes, but there's a lot of us that wouldn't mind paying a little bit more to get this infrastructure fixed. And we're doing it already with the half-penny sales tax.
Yeah. No, I was a big supporter of half-cent sales taxes, you know.
You know, first, I just have the greatest respect for Lorelei. The fight she puts up for this lagoon and this community, she's, you know, the county's lucky to have her doing what she does for us. And in respect to your question on how can your attorneys be prepared to address, you know, the concerns that we may have in the 3 minutes, I wanted to go ahead and put some of my concerns out here with the proposal as it's drafted now.
Are you guys writing this down, please?
So, you know, first is, I think it needs to be clear whom can be the target of these suits. Is it governmental entities only? Is it private individuals? My concern is that if a private individual comes in, they get a permit from the county or the state or whomever they're getting the permit from, and they go about their private activity thinking they're in compliance in the law, and they get hit with one of these lawsuits. That's a concern to me because they have no idea, no ability to prepare for that. So I'd like some clarity on that. And then this is more of a question for our attorney and your attorneys as well, is do we even have the authority to put in a law that can supersede, you know, FDEP? The concern on the biosolids, my understanding is that's being applied under an FDEP permit.
It is.
So do we even have the authority to tell FDEP your permit is not authorized in Brevard County, you can't apply it here? I don't know the answer to it. I think it's a valid question to be had, so that's one of the things I would like to have some more information on. And then, again, my concerns on the unintended consequences of the fee shifting provisions. You know, I spent time in the federal court system. We were overwhelmed with ADA lawsuits and fair labor wage lawsuits, and usually the parties of those lawsuits were really getting very de minimis funds, and at the end of the day they were all driven by the attorney's fees and cost, and that ended up driving litigation where attorneys that were bringing these relatively minor suits in, but then spending hundreds of hours litigating them. So that's not really a question for your attorneys. That's just a concern I have with the language as drafted, and that it's a shall instead of a may. You know, if it was a may be able to, you know, recover cost and under egregious circumstances, I could probably get behind it, but as it stands now, I've got real concerns with it. You know, that said, I am in support of hearing more on this next hearing, and I don't know what, you know, the rest of the 11 here tonight say, but again, thank you for what you do for this county and this lagoon. Please keep it up.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver.
Mr. Nye for a question.
So I had mentioned this last time, and maybe now since we're talking about having your attorneys come, they could walk us through this. So my understanding was this would give, like you say, an individual standing to challenge, you know, in a situation where there appears to be pollution or damage to the environment. And I specifically asked last time, could it be an agency where they are treating wildlife in a particular fashion that is contrary to what normally happens in nature? Like if you could show a cause and effect relationship between the way a particular species is being treated and that's damaging to the environment, you're saying this would give somebody standing to challenge that government agency, right? That's managing the species, like, so it could be Florida Wildlife, or it could be the federal, I used to do their phone systems, for heaven's sake, I'm drawing a blank, but you get my point. So I guess what I'm trying to walk through is like, what would that look like? And who would be the arbiter? Like if you said, hey, I think because this species is being treated in this fashion, it's causing damage to the lagoon, who would be the arbiter? Like, are you just, like, to me, it's like you're begging the question, you're asking the agency, in this similar concept, I think what you're describing with DEP, you're asking the agency that is managing that, you know, particular species or whatever to, like, how I'm just, are you tracking with me at all, or?
Not quite sure. I mean, this has to deal with water, so I'm not sure where you're going with the wildlife angle, Mr. Nye.
Okay. Well, I'll
so I mean,
I hope your attorneys come, I guess, and I'll try to more coherently draft my question.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm not sure how with the wildlife, you have the Endangered Species Act, and you can deal with EPA and you know, so I'm not sure.
Well, that's what I'm after, is if you could show a causal relationship between the fact that a particular species is being treated in a fashion by a government agency that is directly resulting in damage to whatever body of water, this would give that, like, that would open up the ability for a citizen or a group to challenge that federal agency over, or the state agency over that's what I'm after.
The treatment of the animal.
Is that consistent with what you're proposing?
I suppose so.
Okay. I'm just, same thing, I'm like chairman here, I'm trying to wrap my head around what all is happening.
Well, thank you, Ms. Thompson. It's great to see you again.
Thank you for your.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Schmidt, for a question.
That's okay. I know I'm short.
No, I am too, so I hear, brother. All right, I'm sorry, Ms. Schmidt, for a question.
I just wanted to say I have some of the same concerns that Mr. Oliver has, and that, I mean, I love Laura Lee. She has the best food in North Brevard, and I know I'm going to hear from other restaurants on that, but I really have some very, very big concerns as far as who can sue, and to explain from maybe your attorneys where you're looking at that, because it seems to me in reading what we have so far that it's very loose, and the taxpayers are going to pay big time, and I think that's something we have to look at.
Okay, so I may be out of line, but it's my impression that this is a template that you guys can massage and work with. And, you know, our goal is, it's obvious that the BMAP and the other pollution regulations that the state agencies have in place are not adequate to protect our water. The water continues to degrade, and our fisheries are gone, our seagrass is gone. There's a lot of lakes and rivers that it's unsafe for people to recreate in. It's a threat to Florida's tourism industry, and we're powerless to do anything. So therein lies our frustration, and you know, hopefully we can work something out. I mean, if you don't like the way it's worded now, maybe you can figure out a better way to word it to achieve the goal of the people having some kind of way to force the state agencies to do a better job of controlling the pollution.
Have you ever tried to force a state agency to do a better job? Thank you.
I do it all the time. I mean, it's like.
Thanks again, Ms. Thompson. Great to see you.
Thank you.
All right, we have Kristen, I think it says Lauti.
Sorry, I'm bad writing.
That's all right. It's just small.
Good evening. Kristen Lorty.
Okay.
Cocoa resident.
Great. Lorty. Okay.
And a surprise speaker tonight. I didn't realize that I was going to talk. But I was listening to the discussion. I've been very interested in it. I did watch the last meeting. I found it very interesting. And I'm finding myself having some opinions on this issue and answering some of the questions that are coming up. And what I'm seeing is that, one, I would really like to make pollution unpopular in Brevard County. So I would really like to make pollution unpopular in Brevard County. And what this measure does, and Mr. DeRocher was very helpful for me, but it seems to bring the power back to the citizens, because we have these agencies that may not be doing the job that we need them to do and focusing in their efforts on Brevard County, but it's bringing the activity back to the citizens. And so if the citizens are initiating action, if they're the ones that are initiating action, they're not going to do that for really, willy-nilly, I don't think. I mean, you're going to have to go get a lawyer. You have to figure this out. You have to take the action. But in this country, things are decided in the courts, by action. And we don't have enough action being taken by our state agencies. So whether it's the state agency that is the one that gets sued, whether it's the polluter that gets sued, and whether it's the taxpayer that pays, because I'd like to speak for a moment about Mr. Fisher and the payment of this, and taxpayers don't want taxes. I'm a taxpayer. I don't want unreasonable taxes. And I see a lot of things that happen in where I live where I feel that the taxation is unreasonable, and I'm actually going in to find out what it is that I'm petitioning against, and I'm still finding it's unreasonable. But let's take the Titusville and the sewage and the lack of paying for that infrastructure. If the discussion is brought into the court and it is determined that Titusville needs to do X, Y, and Z, as a taxpayer, whether it happens in Titusville or Cocoa where I live, I'm going to feel better about it because it was decided somewhere. The measure, both sides got to talk, they hashed it out. Somebody is polluting, somebody needs to stop polluting, somebody needs to pay for that. And if my taxes have to go up to pay for that, I am willing to do that. So I see this as a positive, and I really like that it's not getting litigated regularly. I mean, this is something that it's come up once, and that holstered in the sheriff in the holster of our agencies, our councils are hesitant. They don't want to bring these measures up. Our commissioners don't want to bring these measures up. But if you have this extra protection and this extra option that citizens have to bring it forward, I think it should be considered. And I will be very discouraged tonight if you guys vote not to move this forward, because I think it's a reasonable proposal and I think it will work its way through. And the gray areas about the legal, they will get cleared up in time. So I just don't think that we should say, well, because the state believes this at the local level, we're going to let that make our decision for us. Thank you for listening to my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Lordy. Any questions? All right, that concludes the public cards that I have in front of me. Is there some discussion on the issue, whether to continue to move forward or not? Mr. Tredis?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that the Florida legislature in 2020 specifically was addressed, has specifically addressed the situation in response to what Orange County was doing. And I've already read the law that was passed in 2020, and it prevents a person or political subdivision from suing in court to enforce rights of water, a body of water. I'll just read it again. Quote, a local government regulation, ordinance, code, rule, comprehensive plan, charter, or any other provision of law may not recognize or grant any legal right to a plant, an animal, a body of water, or any other part of the natural environment that is not a person or political subdivision as defined in section 101.8, or grant such a person or political subdivision any specific rights relating to the natural environment not otherwise authorized in general law or specifically granted in the state constitution, end quote. So this specifically says that a person shall not have any right to sue in court other than what's already allowed by general law, state law, or the state constitution. I did a little bit of research, and I found an article from Florida Phoenix, which is a pretty decent publication on what happens with government. And I'll just read a bit from that. Quote, Associated Industries of Florida, a coalition of industry lobbyists, endorsed the measure, saying it addresses water quality and protects Florida businesses from lawsuits by defining that people cannot sue on behalf of inanimate objects, i.e. rivers, lakes, streams, etc. That latter provision shields businesses from being sued over rights of nature, a movement attempting to assign legal rights to natural resources such as waterways, end quote. So it's really clear to me that this law was specifically passed to prevent a charter government in the county charter from giving a person a right to sue businesses and government, and that's exactly what this proposal does. It's preempted by state law, it's clear. And it's just the law. We can't as a commission say, well, let's see what happens. It's going to be, first of all, it violate our duty to only pass proposals which are not inconsistent with state law and the Constitution. So it's not a matter of personal preference. I think everyone here wants clean water, but I'm not willing to I don't want to move forward on a proposal which violates specifically state law, which was passed specifically to prevent a charter commission like this from passing a proposal like this. So for those reasons, I would make a motion that the commission withdraw Proposal 8, right to clean water, from further consideration.
Okay. Other comments on this? There's a motion on the floor, but obviously we're going to have debate on that motion. So is there comments about this motion?
Did he say proposal 6 or 8?
He meant 6.
Well, I think for the record he
Oh,
means
Proposal 6, sorry.
Okay. Comments on this? Anyone? Mr. Fisher.
Yeah, my comment is I'm okay moving it to the next meeting, but I think we ought to ask our attorney to look at what Blaze brings up, and they need to have their attorney here and present to answer some of the legal questions that we have concerning it.
Sure. Okay, we can do that. Other comments? Only thing I would say is, I really have major concerns. I think everyone else brought up the excellent proposals of why, but there's a place called the legislature, and it's I lived in there for a long time, and whether it be net ban or cruise boats nowhere, and they were dumping things in our water, when people were concerned about, they acted, and I think the same thing happened in Brevard County. $500 million, I think, is going to be spent at least on attempting to clean up the waterways, and this seems I find it interesting also that when people don't like how democracy is working, they want to go to the courts to get around democracy, and then on the other arguments, they want democracy because it's not working for them in the courts. So I just think this is the best of intentions. I know we need 10 votes to pass this along to the commission, and I one, I want to hear the arguments. I'll let it pass for this week. I'll vote to keep it alive, so to speak, for this week, because I think their lawyer has maybe some good points maybe we're missing. But I think as Mr. Fisher and Ms. Schmidt and Mr. Tredis and others, let alone Mr. Oliver, brought up, there's just a lot of vagueness to this. And the last thing I want to do is move something that's not completely clear. And so I highly recommend that your lawyer be here next time, because there's a lot of unintended potential here. And when you start making it easier to lawsuits, I think a lot of concerns could be highlighted. And the clinching reason for my opinion on this is Mr. Oliver lives in this world very much with the water management districts. He has expertise in this. And when he is not clear on what's kind of moving down the pike, you're going to see me, back his opinion very much so. Mr. Tredis.
I'm a rules guy, so Robert's Rules of Order provides that a motion, if it's not seconded, is defeated. So if there's not a second, then I'm wondering, is there a second?
Is there a second?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll let this go till next time. I think that we've made the message clear. I would highly I'd put a lot more clarity, because if you're asking us, Ms. Thompson and others, to do it for you, we're not going to be able to do it. I mean, if you guys are the experts, and this is beyond maybe Mr. Oliver, this is well beyond our field. And the theory of unintended consequences is smack in the face here. And the duplicity on I want democracy sometimes, I want the court sometimes, is also causing me a lot of heartburn. So. And I do want, Mr. Gugelman, you're going to look at it. Mr. Tredis is concerned about undercutting, even though some people might think it might get struck down later. This is the law of today, and I'm going to live by the law today, because I can't tell a police officer, hey, that thing I'm not going to go there. Okay, so with that, number 6 is moving forward with, All right, number 7, repeal by Mr. Tredis, repeal Article 8 and Section 8.1. Mr. Tredis, you're recognized.
Thank you. The proposal is to repeal from the charter Brevard Public Schools, and specifically elections by single-member residence area districts. Florida statutes provide for single-member districts by 2 methods. One is if the Florida School Board passes a resolution to place single-member districts on the ballot, and the voters approve for it. If that happens, then there are single-member residence area elections for school board members. The other way is by petition drive. School board elections by Florida statute are district-wide, county-wide, in which every voter gets to vote in every school board race, unless those other two, one of the other 2 options takes place, which is a school board resolution passed, then the voters pass it for single-member residence area or the petition. So there's no provision for charter amendment to create single-member residence area school board elections. And I submit that the legislature has preempted this whole field of creation of single-member districts. As I said at the last meeting, it can be illustrated by the fact that we will end up with different results if this were to remain in the charter. Because if this were to pass and then another, if a charter is hypothetically a way you can amend it, I file another, or a proposal were made hypothetically to go to to county-wide elections, and then the school board were to pass a resolution to go to single-member elections, and all were to pass, then we would have the voters voting for both single-member districts and county-wide district elections conflicting. And for those reasons, it was just an error that happened when the earlier charter commission put it in the charter, and my proposal would repeal that error. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tredis. Are there questions? I do have one appearance card. Pamela Castellano. She left. Okay. No other appearance cards. Do I have any objection to moving this forward to our would be the third meeting. All right, seeing no objection, we are moving on to number 8. And that is by Mr. Burns, dealing with vacancies and suspensions. Mr. Burns, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Testing, there we go. I'll be brief. Other than what I've already spoke about before, I think I want to emphasize the necessity, I think, of this proposal, although it won't affect our current situation with our current vacancy. I think it's important that we are almost 2 months in now since we've lost a seat, both figuratively and literally, and we still have no idea of if and when that seat will be filled by appointment by Governor DeSantis. I don't think that that's fair to our voters that have no representation at this time. One part of the proposal that I haven't spoken on, but it is in the proposal, is in the instance where there is not enough time to have a special election for logistical purposes, that we do have an appointment, but that appointment is by the Board of County Commissioners, much like they appoint members to any other county board. That way we still have a transparent process. That way people know what they, who has applied for the position. Anyone can apply for the position. There can be some kind of debate and discussion about it, as opposed to what we have right now is a non-transparent issue with no communication of if and when or ever this seat will be filled. So the other part that I wanted to emphasize was if we didn't have the time for a special election, was to have an appointment, but the appointment be by the Board of County Commissioners, not by the governor.
Okay, great. Any questions for Mr. Burns?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Does this mean that you want this to move forward or not? Anybody have an opinion? All right, so we'll move that proposal forward to its next reading. I just been informed that a Marcus, looks like Huckman, wanted to speak on the last proposal. I'm sorry, sir, you're in the wrong pile there. Come on in. Yeah, of course. And you want to speak on Mr. Tredis's repeal of Article 8 and Section 8.1, sir?
Yep.
Okay.
Really short and quick.
Oh, no problem.
On that.
Thanks for coming.
By the way, I like how the process goes here. It's a very good. To me, this is the way government should look like.
Okay,
So
thanks.
great job to the community members and everybody here. Great job. First of all, on Proposal 7, I like the idea of still having 5 board members representing their residency area. They would represent their communities because they are invested in their community directly. Now, the question I have, and I've looked at this a few times, the proposal, and I'm not quite understanding this part. In this proposal, I do not understand why the mask and LGBT policy guidance has to do with this proposal. Because no matter if you have 5 single-member residency board or at-large bids, it will still determine these policies based on state and federal laws determine what a district policies will be. So I just wanted some clarification on that, because when I was reading it, there was a LGBTQ guidelines when I was reading on the website as part of Proposal 7. And I was confused on that. So I just wanted some clarification because I didn't understand it.
Okay, I think I can try to answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, and the mask. Thank you.
You're welcome. If this proposal passes and the school board between now and whenever something is required to get on the ballot, I don't know what that date that is by the supervisor elections, but if the school board does not pass a resolution to have single-member elections by residence area put on the ballot, then elections will be district-wide, county-wide, meaning you will be able to vote, I'd be able to vote in every school board election in Brevard County. I personally favor that. And that's the only point I was making, because it allows a person to vote in every race. So if there's a school board member that you particularly would like out of office, you'll be able to vote for them. That was my point. The proposal itself, doesn't make that happen, because a school board could pass a resolution for single-member elections by residence area.
Yes.
but they haven't yet. And if they don't, and this passes, that will be the result.
But that does, the LGBT guidelines, and that has nothing to do with that? That's what I want to make sure. That's what
Because
Like how?
no school board member, to my knowledge, has done anything to try to repeal the transgender policy, the Brevard Public Schools. To me, would be a reason to vote them out of office because they haven't done that, and I would have the opportunity to do that in every school board race in Brevard County.
So
that was my
any
point.
kind of policy. If there's this one, it could be any type of policy that somebody disagreed with.
It could be any reason, correct.
Okay.
That was
That's
just a
what
reason I
wanted
pointed out.
clarification on before I disagree or agree. Okay, thank you. Welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Any further comments? You're good. Okay.
Can I just?
Yeah, Ms. Schmidt? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll defer to Ms. Schmidt.
You know, we keep talking about single-member district and the school board, and Mr. Goodwin has said, you know, Section 8 and 8.1 are not legal in the charter based on court cases in Florida law. And I was wondering if it wouldn't be prudent, since Blaise brought up the fact that if they haven't put it or on the school board agenda to put on the referendum, if it wouldn't be prudent for us to have Mr. Googleman contact the school board and ask if they are willing to place on the ballot for a single-member district, since it seems to be such a big question, and whatever their comment is, so be it. But, and then we can deal with,
Point of information, they did discuss that at their meeting on Tuesday.
I'm sorry.
They discussed all of that stuff at their meeting on Tuesday about potentially adding it. They asked their attorney to look into what they'd need to do to add that kind of proposal,
Okay.
so they're looking into it.
Well, that's good, and I think it would be worthwhile for maybe Mr. Googleman to get with their attorney or the superintendent to find out exactly then what they propose to do. So,
Mr. Tredis.
Sorry to interrupt, but I would be opposed to that, asking Mr. Googleman to do that, because it's going way beyond the scope of the Charter Review Commission to make proposals to change it. And what it does is, let's get involved in school board races, because we apparently, or someone apparently, prefers a single-member district by residence area, is the read I'm getting from that input, which is advise the school board to do this, and I'm against that. Because then we'd be all taking like opinions on, well, do we want countywide or statewide? We shouldn't be, or countywide or district-wide. We shouldn't be doing that. And plus, they're already looking at it. They know about it. These are public meetings, so I'd be opposed to the commission attorney getting involved in that manner.
Ms. Schmidt, any?
Can I go sit down?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Mr. Hockman, I'd love for you.
You're excused.
Mr. Chairman, I'd love for Mr. Hockman to stay for a second.
Oh, okay.
I'd love for, and I don't really have a question for him. It's really a comment on what he raised. And Mr. Tredis, I didn't have a problem with the merit of all the legal issues that you raised in your memo. But Mr. Hockman posed a question about the final few paragraphs, Section 5. And we're back to the policy again. Your concerns over, specifically, you said, transgender, critical race theory et al., raise the policy-related issues that drive you to want to change the charter to deal with policy-related issues. And I just think it's the improper place and improper protocol to do so. And I will make the same motion, Mr. Chairman, that I made earlier, that this particular proposal be removed from the list.
Does that have to be a motion, Chair?
Hold on a second. You want Mr.?
No, I just was referencing the comment that he made. I think that's, if I improperly stated his question, I apologize. But
Yeah, give this man a slice of pizza. All right. Okay, so let me just make sure we're all know what we're kind of dealing with. Mr. Moore, you wanted to basically see if you want to remove this whole idea, number 7, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and on the basis of you don't want to have that option? Or give me the basis again so I understand how it went.
I don't know that I'm necessarily required to provide a basis for the procedural motion, but it's just, I mean, Mr. Hockman, I think, raises a very valid point. the memo itself provided a number of technical issues that I think were proper and appropriate. Section 5 provides that Mr. Tredis's rationale is policy specific, that he's concerned with policies emanating from a political body, and I think I was specific, transgender, critical race theory, and the like. And I think there's numerous ways to address those. Amending the county's charter for the sake of a political purpose, which he included in the political policy purpose, which he included in his memo, I think is an inappropriate reason and rationale to amend this charter. If there's not 5 other supporters, I'm happy to go the way that the body goes, but just wanted to raise that issue, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's helpful.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Tredis.
I'll strike that from my proposal. I'll strike it.
My motion still does, I'm back to your Robert's Rules of Order. Striking that doesn't change the motion. Your rationale is what you stated, right? That's what you put on the record as the rationale for your proposal. If there aren't 6 votes,
is because it's illegal.
Okay, let's, okay, so Ms. Schmidt, you second that? Okay. All right, so we're on debate, because we do want to debate this before we vote on it. That's part of the Robert's Orders as well. Is there a comment, because we are now debating whether to keep this as one of the proposals. Is there a debate besides Mr. Tredis? Because I'll let him go last, because it's his proposal. Actually, I'll let Mr. Moore go last. Mr. Tredis go before that. Any other comments on this issue? Okay, the only thing I had question about is, maybe I've got too many proposals in front of me, but I thought it was going to be, we are proposing that it be a countywide vote for all school board members. What you are setting instead is that it would be as a fallback if the school board does not proactively say they want to do it by district. Is that correct? Mr. Tredis, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Only thing I would say is the way I would want to see this and where I want to vote on it is give those citizens a choice, either countywide or district-wide. All this other stuff is superfluous to me. But the question's on the floor. Mr. Tredis, if no one else wants to talk, you're welcome to defend your position, and we'll have a vote whether to keep this proposal alive.
This commentary in my proposal about the transgender policy is really extraneous, and I'll be glad to strike it if I could. I guess procedurally there's an objection to me doing that, but go ahead, get rid of it. That's not the reason for this proposal. The reason for the proposal is that it violates state law. And it's going to result, if it remains in the charter, it's going to result in contested school board elections, because the loser is going to say, wait a minute, I was in a single-member district election by residence area, which was illegally created by the county charter. That's why the supervisor of elections did it that way, by single-member residence area. It's illegal. I should have had the opportunity for all the electors in the Brevard County to vote for me. And the courts, I submit, are going to rule in favor of the losing candidate, okay? That's the reason for this proposal. Everything else is extraneous about LGBTQ or anything else. Go ahead, strike it, get rid of it. That's not the reason for this proposal. And you don't agree with that, Mr. Moore. You said you agree with the legal analysis. So if you want to strike it, you're saying, I want to leave in the charter what I know is unlawful, not according to law. That's really what your proposal is to leave it in the charter. And there's no more time to submit another proposal. So it's pretty serious. So, but I take your proposal as that. I want to leave it in the charter knowing that it was unlawfully done. That's all.
Mr. Moore, to close on your argument.
Mr. Chairman, I'll close by saying this. My statement is what it is, and Mr. Tredis can characterize it however he sees fit. I just lodged my specific objection, and this body can make a decision whether they intend for it to remain on the list or not.
Okay, you got it. Thank you. All right. What we're going to do now, again, let's just call the roll on this. If you support Mr. Moore's push to remove this as a proposal, vote yes. If you do not support Mr. Moore's proposal, vote no. So if you please call the roll.
Robin Fisher,
Yes.
Kendall Moore,
Yes.
Marcia Newell,
Yes.
Mike Iridopoulos,
No.
Marie Rogerson,
No.
Blaise Tredis,
No.
Matt Nye,
No.
Gabriel Jacobs Kirstein,
No.
Cole Oliver,
No.
Sue Schmidt. Jordan Chandler.
All right, by your vote, we're going to continue to have the discussions on this issue, and I appreciate you bringing up the good points this morning. Thank you. Okay, we're done now with number 7, and we have already done number 8, and we're now going to move to number 9, another interesting proposal from Mr. Fisher on term of office. You're welcome to introduce this, Mr. Fisher.
I think I stated last time what all the responsibilities are for county commissioners and how long it takes to ramp up for the job and understand the job and build the relationships that you need to build to be effective at the job. And I know that term limits are something that voters have voted in, and I respect that, and I'm not asking to get rid of term limits. And I know that we don't have term limits on sheriff, clerk, property appraiser, tax collector, supervisor election, school board members, U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, and go on and on. And so all my proposal is asking to do is for a county commissioner to not get rid of term limits, but give the voters a chance to decide if they would rather it be 3 terms instead of 2 terms.
Got it. All right, we're going to move to the appearance cards, and then we'll go into debate at that point. Nick Tombolini. Nick, I think he's here. Okay, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm getting a little bit of deja vu with this proposal because it was just a few years ago that I was in the Jacksonville Commission chambers listening to 2 politicians make the exact same argument that Jacksonville's 8-year voter-approved term limit should be replaced with a 12-year politician-friendly term limit. And I remember driving home that day and thinking to myself, why are these 2 commissioners so adamant about getting rid of term limits? Why do they care so much about getting those extra 4 years in office? I was genuinely bewildered. I didn't have an answer. But I would get my answer about 7 months later when those 2 anti-term limit commissioners, Reggie and Katrina Brown, were indicted by the FBI in a criminal corruption conspiracy. They had been stealing millions of dollars from the city of Jacksonville. And the reason they wanted to make term limits disappear, the reason why they were so adamant about it is that they never wanted that gravy train to stop. And so for me, this was a cautionary tale that there is no good reason why any elected official, whether it's the President of the United States or a local county commissioner, needs more than 8 years in office to get the job done. Now, there may be self-serving reasons, there may be self-dealing reasons, but there's no legitimate reason why a commissioner can't acquiesce to allow for a new voice, a new perspective to emerge every 8 years. New voices and new ideas, that's not just the essence of term limits, that's the essence of a republic. That's the essence of America. We live in one of the wealthiest and most well-educated places in America. We have a population here of 600,000 people, and the underlying implication of this proposal is that in a county that wealthy, that educated, 600,000 people, there are only 5 who are qualified to lead us as county commissioners. We have such a vibrant population. We have such a diverse population. I'm absolutely confident that we can find a new generation of leaders to step up every 8 years, just as we have been able to do, God bless you, just like we've been able to do for the last 20 years. I forwarded the polling to all of you. This proposal is very, very unpopular. 82% of Brevard County residents oppose this proposal. By a 2-to-1 margin, Brevard County voters, bless you again, believe that this is being done for the betterment of politicians, not for the betterment of citizens in our county. And so I would just suggest to you, let's kill this cancer of longer term limits before it can metastasize. 8 is great, and we need to shelve 12. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, next we have Katie Delaney.
I'm in agreement with the last speaker. I am all for term limits, and if it's good enough for the President of the United States, it should be good for the county commission. So thank you, respectfully.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, there's no other appearance cards. Is there some comment about the issue?
I'll move to remove this from the docket.
All right, and you have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, we have, this is, so let's debate this before we have a vote whether to remove or not. Ms. Tredis, in debate.
I have two comments. I think that the way this is worded would result in, I believe there's 2 county commissioners now who are in the middle of their second term. And I believe the way this is worded would result in those 2 having the opportunity to serve 5 terms of office, because charter amendments are not retroactive, they're prospective, so it would not apply to their first term of office they've already served. And it wouldn't apply to their current term, because a term of office is 4 years, not 2 years. So it wouldn't apply to the term of office they're in. So they'd have 3 consecutive terms after their current term, resulting in 5 terms. And that's I believe, what would result from the wording of this. You could probably word it differently, but that's not really the main reason I'm even voting against it, although it's an important one. But more importantly, I think this should come, a proposal like this needs to come from a county commissioner who is in office. They have the ability to get on a charter amendment to the ballot simply by their vote. We don't have to go through a year of meetings like we're doing. So if a county commissioner believes that it should be 3 terms and not 2, then they need to make the proposal, not an appointee from a county commissioner who's in office now. I think it's a matter of accountability in that regard. So for those 2 reasons, I'll vote to shelve it.
Others in debate? Mr. Chandler?
Mr. Chair, I would just say that I struggle with this particular proposal. Number one, being a young man, I don't necessarily agree with career politicians. But, other than that, I think if an individual wants to, serve more time in public office, I think you can run for another office. And so I just struggle with the proposal itself. Definitely do understand Mr. Fisher, but just can't support it.
Others in debate?
I forgot one comment, if it's okay, and that is...
I think we know where you stand. We're good. Others in debate? Okay. Mr. Fisher, you're recognized to close on your measure.
Yeah, I think that actually some people think it's automatic. If you win your first term, you're going to win your second term, and you will win your third term and your fourth term. And we know that doesn't work that way. There's people that's served 1 term. There's people that serve 2 terms, and I'm asking them to give the opportunity. If they're doing a good job and the voters want to have them serve that 3rd term, then the voters ought to make that decision. So there's no guarantee that just because there's 3 terms on county commission, you're going to get to serve all 3 of them. We've seen one recently where that didn't happen. And so it's always up to the voter. They're going to get voted on every 4 years. And so I would like to see it move forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, there's a motion on the table with no other debate. Why don't we call the roll on this? As if you agree with Mr. Nye on his motion to remove this from consideration, vote yes. If you do not support Mr. Nye's motion to remove it, vote no. Can you please call the roll?
Robin Fisher,
Yes, mean you wanted to.
You want to vote no because
No.
Kendall Moore. No. Marcia Newell. No. Mike Herodopoulos.
yes.
Marie Rogerson.
Yes.
Blaise Tredis. Matt Nye. Gabriel Jacobs Kirstein.
Yes.
Cole Oliver.
No.
Sue Schmidt.
No.
And Jordan Chandler.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6 yeses.
That's yes out of 6, correct? Yes. So by your vote, we are no longer going to consider number 9. Okay, number 10 by Ms. Rogerson. You are recognized to introduce number 10.
Thank you kindly. So we had a vibrant discussion about our own rules, about what bar should be set when we make changes to the charter. And I think we had a pretty solid consensus that there needed to be, pretty good reason to be changing the charter. And as it stands Our county charter only requires a majority, a simple majority, to change the charter on the ballot. And to bring it all into consistency, my proposal changes that to 60%. It mirrors exactly Florida state statute. This is literally the wording from the Florida state statute. So it strikes 9 words from our current charter and makes it 60%, and then adds, there was a little bit in the Florida statute that is helpful for us. It just tells when the charter amendments become effective if it's not specified in the charter amendments.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? There's no appearance cards. Any questions for Ms. Roderson on her proposal? Ms. Tredis?
I have a suggestion, and it's just that I agree with your proposal, but I believe, and maybe Mr. Googleman could confirm or not confirm what I say, but the charter amendments are effective the day that they're approved by the voters. And I think if it just ended at measure and deleted, it shall be effective, all these effective date, it's very confusing. Or on such other date as may be specified in the amendment or revision. People would be going to this and looking, it's just, to me, it's just completely unnecessary. So I would make that suggestion.
Yeah, I couldn't find in the charter where it specified when charter amendments become effective. So this was just literally, and I agree with you, the wording is a little confusing, but it's the state statute. I stole it from there.
Right, well, state statutes do have effective dates. So if that's what you're following, then I can understand. But I really just think it's confusing, and it could be stricken, I suggest.
It was the state statute talking about when amendments to our Florida Constitution become effective. So it's the way that we do that at the state level.
And we'll work on that I think this can obviously move forward.
Yeah.
I thank you for being consistent with our last vote too. I'm a strong supporter of this based on my history as well. Other comments on this proposal number 10? All right, we'll take a look at that language if you want to make some adjustments work. Well, you can't work with Mr. Tredis unless it's public, but if we can work that through, we'll try to find it where it is abundantly clear to voters that in the future it would take 60% as opposed to 50 plus 1. Yeah. All right, without objection, let's show that proposal moving forward. We have now number 11, and that is Tay Smith. I believe I saw an email saying he would not be here for these proposals. And the requested action is to change the name of Brevard County. There are no appearance cards for that. Does anyone have an opinion on?
I'm going to move that we get rid of this.
Okay. We have a second. Does anyone want to debate on the issue?
I'd like to state something for the record.
Yes.
And that is that I dispute Mr. Smith's factual statement that is part of the proposal that Theodore W. Brevard was a Confederate comptroller. I looked, you find things instantly now, that he was Florida comptroller from 1855 to 1860. And in 1854, that was before the Confederacy, so he was not a Confederate comptroller. And the only other thing I'd like to put in the record is he mentions that he was the father of Brigadier General Theodore Brevard. That is true, and Theodore Brevard was he went to Brigadier General with the Confederate Army, but I don't think that his son should be part of a criticism of the father. I think the saying usually is the sins of the father be cast upon the son, but this is sort of the opposite, although I just wanted to get that for the record. Thank you.
Okay. All right, there was a motion, and it was seconded by everyone? Okay. All right, by your vote, we are going to remove that from consideration. Okay, so we have number 12. Mr. Smith is also not here in this measure, and this is to amend Article 2 Legislative Branch to include an elected at-large mayor of Brevard with increase of salary for a commissioner, blah, blah, blah. Do we have any comments on this measure since no one's here to have a card on it?
Move to do.
Ms. Schmidt moves that we remove this from consideration. Does anyone second that? Second. Do we have any debate on this issue? Do we have cards for this one? Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no debate, although, well, by your lack of action, we'll show that.
No, you need to do it
by your vote, all those who want to strike this from consideration say yay.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed say nay. The proposal number 11 is now no longer under 12, excuse me, is no longer under consideration. Okay, we're going to move to number 13, also by Mr. Smith, and that is to amend Article 3, Executive Branch, to define an elected at-large mayor of Brevard County and county manager. Given the fact that I believe it's tied to the previous, Ms. Schmidt moves to remove this from consideration.
Sure.
Without objection, Mr. Nye seconds that. All those in agreement of removing this say yay.
Aye.
Okay, without objection, show that remove number 13. Okay, number 14. Okay, we're getting back to recall here. Amend this section to allow any elected official under charter pursuant to section 4.2 to be recalled.
I'm going to move that we remove it.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Mr. Tretta seconds that motion. Anybody want to speak in favor of Mr. Smith's idea? Okay, seeing none other, all those who approve removing it from consideration say yay. A little more enthusiasm.
Mr. Chair, there's some cards on this item.
Oh, there is 14, I'm sorry. Katie Delaney, I'm sorry. Okay. All those who approve of removing it say yay.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, so number 4, all those in.
Nay.
Okay, you're a nay on that one? Okay. By your vote, that is removed from consideration. Number 15. Let's see. Every 4 years. I know my opinion now as well. So, okay, we're going to be consistent with this. Ms. Schmidt is going to.
Yeah, I moved to remove it.
Before we do, I just had a quick comment.
Sure, of course.
I actually do think this is a good idea, and here's why. You know, the things are moving a lot faster since 1997. And I looked back and saw that in 2010, there were 54 proposals. We're here on 24, some of which have merit and some of which are pretty easy to discard. You know, this is a situation where you always have the option to change back to 6 if this becomes irrelevant. But in the process, you're also having an opportunity for the public to make proposals and have more access to amending the charter. And in addition to that, you're having more forum to debate that, both with the colleagues up here, the fellow commissioners, and also, again, the people that join us here in the audience. And while none of us want to be here for 4 hours a night, routinely, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I do think that the every 4-year idea has at least enough merit to go forward. Whether or not we approve it as a group or not is a different story. And then the only counter argument I could really see to it is just the cost that it imposes. I'm not good at math, I'm a lawyer, but 33% roughly is the amount that it would cost extra to have this every 4 years as opposed to every 6. And I think that's pretty de minimis or minimal compared to its potential benefit. So for those reasons, I think this should move forward and you know, hopefully somebody will have some different perspective on it. But that's it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any comments on that? We have a motion on the floor to remove this from consideration, but if, again, we can call the yeas and nays, or people want to back the opinion of Mr. Jacobs Kirstein. I'm okay with moving it forward, too. I mean, it's whatever you all want to do.
I say move it to 10 years.
Okay, well, the motion's on the table by Ms. Schmidt to remove from consideration. All those in agreement say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay.
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 Was there a second?
There was a second, yeah. So I guess we'll have to go to roll call. All right, if the secretary please call the roll.
Robin Fisher. Kendall Moore. Marcia Newell. Mike Herodopoulos.
No.
Marie Rogerson.
Yes.
Blaze Tredis,
This is to remove it.
No, yeah, so let's make sure we make this clear.
Yeah.
If you want to remove it, vote yes,
Yes.
correct? If you don't want to remove it, vote no.
Start over?
So let's start over again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Robin Fisher,
Yes.
Kendall Moore, Marcia Newell, Mike Herodopoulos,
No.
Marie Rogerson,
Yes.
Blaze Tredis, Matt Nye,
No.
Gabriel Jacobs Kirstein,
Nay.
Cole Oliver,
Yes.
Sue Schmidt,
Yes.
Jordan Chandler.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6, 7 yays.
7 yes.
So we're going to remove that from consideration. Okay.
2, 3.
Okay, we got one more from Mr. Smith. And that is add a section to the charter titled Non-Partisan Election.
I'll move to take this one. Second.
All right, we have a proposal to remove this from consideration and a second. It was introduced by Mr. Nye and seconded by Mr. Tredis. Is there any conversation on this issue?
Just one question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
This is for Mr. Googleman. Mr. Googleman, have the elections, according to our charter, ever been nonpartisan?
Yes.
When was that?
Under the original charter, the elections were to be nonpartisan, and the charter was subsequently amended to require partisan elections.
And that was what year, I'm sorry?
In the 90s.
In the 90s, okay.
Yeah.
That's it, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to get a chance to cheer to my good friends in the other party that just because there's more of you than there are of us, maybe it should be a nonpartisan election rather than partisan.
Well, up until about the 1970s is about the opposite, so yeah.
Certainly that, no.
We've seen some changes, yeah. But no, great point. All right, all those in favor of?
Mr. Chair, I believe there's a card.
Oh, there is a card. You'll yield? Okay, thank you. Sorry, Katie. All right, all those in favor of removing it from consideration, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay for me.
We'll go to roll call, I guess. Okay. So if you want to remove this from consideration, vote yes. If you don't want to remove it from if you want to keep it under consideration, vote no.
Robin Fisher,
No.
Kendall Moore, Marcia Newell,
Yes.
Mike Herodopoulos,
Yes.
Marie Rogerson,
Yes.
Blaze Tredis, Matt Nye,
Yes.
Gabriel Jacobs Kirstein,
Yes.
Cole Oliver,
Yes.
Sue Schmidt,
Yes.
Jordan Chandler.
Oh, the yays have it. 1, 2, 3.
By your vote, the yeas have it, and we are removing that from consideration. Okay, we are now on number 17. And this is on term limits for county commissioners. Mr. Thomas, you are recognized once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be more brief this time. This proposal is inspired by a resolution that was filed in Congress a few years ago by then Congressman, now Governor Ron DeSantis, to impose a lifetime term limit on members of Congress. What this would do, it would strike the word consecutive from the term limits provision in the charter and create a lifetime term limit for county commissioners. Because one thing that many people in the community share with me is that they love the 8-year term limit, but they don't like the fact that it's consecutive, because when it's consecutive, you have the possibility for formerly termed out county commissioners to come back. They could run again. It's like we've got this zombie politician issue, and this is something that would kind of seal it up and create a lifetime term limit. Because right now, when you've got a term limit that has a loophole as wide as this, and you could drive a Mack truck through it, that's not really a term limit at all. The goal of citizens originally in putting this on the ballot was to eradicate political careerism and to allow for innovative new ideas, new solutions to modern problems. And I feel like this amendment would help accomplish that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about it.
All right, any questions? All right, we have one appearance card. It's my Miss Katie Delaney. Any support, or you have an opinion on?
I thought it was about the other.
Okay, sure, okay. All right, questions? Comments? All right, so there's no objection to moving this forward? All right, see no objection, we'll move this forward. Okay, Mr. Lubiker is not here. This is another issue on recall. Let's see, I don't have the sheet on it. Let's see. And this is the issue where the county commissioner shall be subject to recall as provided by general law. Any election, I think everyone's read through it. Are there questions on this issue?
I believe that Mr. Gugelman gave us some information, and that it basically says that this particular item is not legal. Am I correct, sir?
Well, let me tell you that it's a very, very close question whether or not you can recall the constitutional officers. The charter, as it is set up currently and has been set up since the early days, intends that you should be able to recall the constitutional officers. There was an amendment to the charter some years ago, changing the numbering in some of the systems, some of the sections, and what Mr. Luebker is trying to do here is to correct that numbering problem.
The only other thing I'd say is he's not here, and his is only hearing number one, correct? That if it's okay with the members, if we could just let him have his day in court, so to speak, and make his opinion known next time, if that's okay with everyone?
That's fine.
Okay. Without objection, we'll show that move to the next meeting. Mr. Tredis, on number 19, on the error.
Right, it's identical to Mr. Lubker's. It was a clerical error. I forget what year it was. So this would simply correct a clerical error from previous year.
Well, I guess we'll just let this one slide to the next meeting as well, as we'll take it up in consideration. So let's show that moving forward for now, and we'll take it up next time. So that number 19 moves forward. Number 20, Mr. Jacobs Kurtzstein, you're recognized.
I'm so used to saying that during the day.
Thank you.
So I'll try to be brief. This was brought up at the last meeting.
Is his mic on?
Sorry about that. Thank you. There was some concern as to the procedure that would be in place. Among other things, neutralizing any bias or, back channeling by this panel. And then in addition, kind of how we would go about curing any defects. And so I think this was the best way that I could come up with. And I also conferred with Mr. Gugelman, and thank you for helping me with that and also giving us your expertise. But this is the language that was drafted. I think it alleviates all the issues that this panel had, or excuse me, this commission had about the panel, and it also gives us the opportunity, which is the most important aspect of it, to cure any defects that we have with the proposals that we've approved as a group going forward. But it also still gives the panel an opportunity to let us know if something's not constitutional. I mean, we don't want to open ourselves up to lawsuits and litigation. We want to make sure the language that we're proposing is indeed legal, but at the same time, it kind of sets out very specifically their parameters, what they can do, and how they go about it, and ultimately gives us the opportunity to not only cure any defects, but also to extend the time that this panel this commission is active in order to do so. So for those reasons, I think it's a good idea.
All right, questions? Mr. Tredis for a question.
No, it's really comment, so.
Sure, please
Okay.
comment.
My comment is that the proposal unlike my proposal on the three-attorney review panel, this proposal does not repeal the three-attorney review panel in Charter sections 7.3.2 through 7.3.3, which is the charter review by petition amendment process. So this leaves the three-attorney review panel in that part of the charter. And I don't think it's a good idea to be inconsistent like that. It doesn't change it, I guess, in the other part. So that's one thing. And I know there was a revised language that came out, and I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking. Maybe I'm looking at the original language, but it also, the proposal includes that these three attorneys would look at ballot language. Was that removed?
My understanding specifically was that they already do, and if I misunderstood, then I have no problem with that. I think it's the main issue was the amendments that we vote on.
Okay. Well,
or the proposals.
It doesn't include ballot review now, so that's something that I think would cause another big problem, quite frankly. I mean, I just do. And then this proposal would also extend, I really think it would be impossible to work in the time frame that we're dealing with. Like right now, if we haven't passed a single proposal, and I guess the earliest one would be June 23rd, and then that goes to a three-attorney panel, I don't think there's enough time to get an answer from these three attorneys about how it could be corrected in their opinion, and then corrected, we would have to vote again on a new proposal, because it would be a new proposal. A corrected proposal would be a new proposal, and that would require 3 public hearings if we're a new proposal, which would put us way beyond the end of the Charter Review Commission, and probably way past when the supervisor election needs, I guess, in August. So for all those reasons, I'm not in favor of the proposal.
Mr. Jacobs-Kirsten, maybe get some clarity on that. I think we had the discussion last time, which our goal was to give us that second bite. And I thought we had looked at this procedure more as almost like we would do in the legislature, which is if there was some concerns raised, we could adjust if we thought necessary. But if you can get clarity, that'd be great.
Sure. So the last sentence to the new revised or amended proposal is, notwithstanding section 7.4 of this charter, the term of the Charter Review Commission shall be extended for the sole purpose of further considering the charter amendment proposal rejected by the 3-person review panel. So it's very specific, and that addresses the time limitations. So we would still be active to handle that particular issue. And then in addition to that, we're not making a new proposal, we're just simply amending the language. And I know an argument could be made that it is a new proposal, but we're not making a new proposal or changing it so much so that its purpose and intent is completely altered. We would simply be just trying to cure the defect that the panel says creates a constitutional issue. Does that?
I mean, that's the way I viewed it when we talked about it last time.
That's certainly the intent.
If Mr. Tredis has some concerns about it, I think that's something we can address in the next 2 meetings.
Sure.
Is that okay with everyone?
We can modify the language accordingly if we need
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Chairman, I think it is a great proposal. I think Mr. Tredis has brought up some concerns that had some significant merit. One was kind of the language consistency and consistency. There's some language that could be cleaned up in that particular section of the charter. The second issue Mr. Tredis brought up earlier was his concern regarding the attorneys being hired by the county commission versus this body, and their fiduciary responsibility to us. I certainly would prefer that they be reporting to us, and then I'm not concerned at all about the time. The time for this particular board, we created by canceling 4 of our meetings to get to this point. And so we certainly, if this had been in place at this time, we would have had the time for the 3-attorney panel review to take place. So certainly think this proposal has merit, not in favor of waiving the 3-attorney panel, but do like the changes that have been proposed.
All right, other comments? All right, so without objection, we're going to move forward with proposal number 20 for our next meeting. All right. By the way, I'm sorry, I had another card. Carrie Takis, did you want to comment on number 18? Are you okay? Okay, thanks. All right, we're now on number 21. We've got some appearance cards, but I'd like Mr. Nye to introduce his proposal on amending Article 8.
Sure. So obviously, a lot of discussion around school board this cycle, and I was just trying to come up with some possible alternatives to the recall and some of these other things. And so looked around the state. There are several counties that have elected superintendents, so I thought this might be something just to put out into the public for consideration. So there's no, I know we've got the question about the next one coming up with the single member versus at large and all of that. But the goal here is essentially to make it where the superintendent is directly accountable to the voters so that he's got some skin in the game when it comes to some of these policies and things.
All right, we have a couple of appearance cards on this. Marcus Huckman, welcome back. Katie Delaney and Carrie Takis. There. Welcome back, Mr. Huckman.
Thank you for having me again. First, I'm curious about the proposal, but would like to hear more about how the superintendent can deflect and ownership of various issues, because those were some specific words in the proposal, especially if the superintendent works at the board's direction, which could be potentially be of 7 board members, 5, 9, whatever that could be. I would like to know more about how would they govern, how would they vote? Specifically, would the superintendent have a vote on different policies, different things happening there? And if you had that, then your future proposal of 7 would have to be an even number. So I'm kind of curious about
right.
that.
The intent here would not be for him to vote.
Okay.
He would not be a voting member. Right.
Okay, that's it.
Thanks, sir. All right, we have Katie Delaney. Welcome back.
Thank you. Some clarification on what was just asked. The superintendent, from what I understand, does have a vote if there's not a quorum, from my understanding. I don't know if that's correct or wrong, but
that's not correct. Or
Are
at least not, yeah, you're right. I didn't flesh it out to that
Oh,
detail. I'm just trying to come up with ways for
I
people
think I read
to have
something
more
like
input.
that, but I could be wrong. But I'm in favor of this proposal. The superintendent, he deals with all operational aspects of our schools, and so he should be held accountable to the residents of Brevard County. And just a couple of things that have happened recently that the superintendent had the sole choice of what to do is there was a dad who came to the school board meeting, and he was wanting to eat lunch with his child. He was told that parents are not allowed to do that anymore because apparently we are security risks and we can't be supervised. Even though there's cafeteria workers and teachers and all sorts of people in the cafeteria, we're the security risk now. And that is Dr. Mullins, his words. Also, the way that he's directing the schools and the teachers and whatnot, if the schools aren't performing in the way that they should be, again, he should be held accountable to the people of Brevard County, the parents and the taxpayers, because the way our kids get educated, it affects everyone in the future. So I'm all for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Carrie Takis.
I'm here to speak in favor of it as well. Like Ms. Delaney said, when we had a father come in and speak about having lunch with his daughter, he was told the parents are a security risk. I only moved here in 2019 after my husband retired from the service, and one of the things I loved was that I could have lunch with my kids. I was there weekly. The kids love it, and that's been taken away the superintendent can fix that. And he's chosen not to, despite parents asking. I've also been watching school districts around the state. Pasco County has an elected superintendent, and he's killing it right now. He's doing what, the parents want. He's listening to everyone. He's taking, his job is, he knows his job is on the line and there's accountability. And we need that, because when there isn't, then the voices of the people are not heard. The voices of the students aren't heard. And that's what we need to bring back. We need to rebuild the trust between the people and the school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you. All right, no other appearance cards. Is there comments on this issue?
I would
Ms.
like to
Rogerson.
say a couple things. I'm not necessarily speaking for or against this, but I would like us to pause and consider that between this proposal and Mr. Trettis's other proposal, we could be adding somewhere between 6 and 10 people onto the ballot in a given year, which I don't know about most voters, but it takes a lot of work to be educated all the way up and down the ballot. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but we are asking our voters to do a lot more homework. And I think we've seen that if elections were our way of holding people accountable, we wouldn't have the problems we have already in our school board. So by electing more people, I don't think it necessarily solves any problems. Just my thought.
Thank you. Mr. Trettis.
I recommend that Mr. Googleman research this to see if it conflicts with state law. I haven't done any research myself, but the research I did found that the legislatures provided how single-member school board district residence area elections are created. And on the next proposal of Mr. Nye at large, I'll speak to in a moment, this legislature has also provided how at-large members can become part of a school board member. So I'm just wondering if the Florida statutes provide for election of school board superintendent by a school board resolution, which is then voted on by the people, or the petition process, basically the same scheme in the Florida statutes. So I'd recommend that that be done.
I will readily volunteer that I did not do that research. So I am not an attorney.
Mr. Oliver.
I'm neither for or against it at this point. I think it's worth looking into. I have some concerns about having a person face the voters when they may be implementing policies that were directed by the elected officials above them, and they don't have any real ability not to do that. So I do have concerns on that, but I would like to kind of see how this fleshes out. But that's just my 2 cents.
Sure.
And I have some concerns. I think about how everybody wants government to operate and run like a business, which is very difficult to do. And I can't imagine you changing your CEO and your business every 4 years. And so that's why it's difficult to make it, run like a business sometime. The other issue would be if I can't imagine being elected and then I don't have the power to vote. And then in this scenario, if you got 5 board members, superintendents elected, you got 6, you could end up, if they had the power to vote, you end up with 3 ties on a lot of issues. So I think those are some concerns that I would have.
Okay. Other thoughts? All right. Is there objection to moving this forward? Okay, we'll move this forward till next time and get some of those questions answered. So thank you very much. So we are moving forward with number 21. All right, number 22 is also by Mr. Nye. It is the revised Citizen Advisory Committee. I'm sorry, Citizen Advisory Process.
Thank you. So this was mentioned at the last meeting by one of the speakers, the public comments. And right now in the charter, we have the ability for citizens to make recommendations once a year. And I agreed with that speaker that that wasn't frequently enough, so I just changed it, or I'm proposing to change it to twice a year. So.
Comments? Ms. Schmidt?
Yeah, the problem, I guess, that I have with this, at every single county commission meeting, there are 2 places on their agenda for public comments. Anyone that wishes to be heard about anything they want to talk about. And they're given an ample time, as you can see, because our chairman's dealing with their timers. And I think plus they also have the opportunity once a year to submit proposals that the staff then reviews, goes through, looks at also from the bottom line if it's a financial. And that moves on then to the county commission also. So you have at least every month except the month of June, you have 3 times that the public can appear at meetings twice, plus on any issue itself. So I think this is not really unnecessary or proper.
That's a motion, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So we're debating the idea of moving forward or not. Any other opinions? Mr. Nye, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Tredis.
Mr. Tredis, I'm sorry.
Oh, I haven't looked at this really closely, but my understanding of it is that this is for instances in which a citizen has tried to get a county commissioner to bring a matter before the commission and has been unsuccessful. And this is a way, once a year now, where that can happen because there's a provision to allow it to happen. And Mr. Nye's proposal is to allow that to happen twice a year instead of once. Is that pretty fair to say? That is correct. Okay. Well, I don't think that twice a year is too much for direct access for people in those circumstances.
Other comments? We have an appearance card on this issue. Kristen Laurie, I bet you spoke earlier. Welcome back.
Good evening, Kristen Lortie, Cocoa resident, and I'm glad when I stepped out I didn't miss this one. I would like to support this. I want to support Board Member Nye in this. I'm a citizen who has concerns, who brings things before councils, who uses those 3 minutes during the council meeting, and it's simply not enough to really bring forward a proposal, an idea, something that you're thoughtfully wanting to bring before a commission. So I supported this last time. I'm really glad that you took the initiative to bring it up when the original petitioner did not bring it up again. I think that twice a year is not unreasonable, and that there are citizens that care about what's going on in our county, that would like to have input, that would like to draft their own thoughts on it, and it's much different. To me, it's much different than just having the right to 3 minutes to speak on a topic. It really is something that is more deliberative, and twice a year, I feel very encouraged. I would feel better as a resident of Brevard knowing that there was this opportunity to address the commissioners twice a year. And people don't always want, hard to believe, but our commissioners don't always want to hear from us as citizens. And so, but as a citizen, I'd like to know what's going on other people's minds, and I'd like to hear what they have presented. And I would look forward to those proposals. So I want to support you, Mr. Nye, in your putting this forward. Thank you.
Fill out the card. All right, we're still on number 22. Is there any further comment on this issue? All right, any objection to moving this forward for further discussion? All right. Mr. Rob Kay, if you have a strong opinion on this, we're going to have a meeting on it next time unless you want to get into your... Sure.
So with, is it 2.910? This is Brevard Charter 2.910? That's correct. It's the process also allows for, if I'm sitting up here and talking to the Board of County Commissions, and if you've watched the last few meetings, sit here, propose something or say something, it's not their duty to respond. But this actually forces a response. From my understanding, it will give them their yay or nay during that process to then see where their stance is. Twice a year is better than once a year. Totally for this one. I think that it's more transparent and allows for more communication and language to be held at these types of events.
And if you don't mind filling out the card fully, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so without objection, we will move forward on that item for next time as well. Okay, so that was number 22. Number 23, also by Mr. Nye, and that is amend the home rule charter to add 2 more school board members.
That's correct. So, and I forgot to preface my comments earlier on the first with the addition of the superintendent. You know, I'm like Mr. Limited Government, so it's very interesting that I'm proposing adding payroll, right, to the new positions. But again, there's been so much discussion around the school board issues. This was another scenario that I looked at to add, in this case, 2 additional board members. I know we have the issue that Mr. Tredis has already brought up about the single member elections and all of that, but the end result of this would be 5 members elected from single member districts and 2 that are elected at large to try to achieve some of that balance that was mentioned, or I don't know if the word balance was used, but the ability for people from all over the county to have more input. So that's the logic. I do understand the issue. You know, if we somehow ended up with both the superintendent, now you've got 8 votes. So we can, again, these are for discussion purposes. I just felt like, again, this has been such a caustic session. I was trying to come up with ways to give people more input on the school board. So,
Thank you, Mr. Nye. We have a couple of folks who want to come speak. Marcus Hockman again, and after that, Katie Delaney.
Thank you once again. I agree with what we were saying. I agree partly with having the 7 members as a school board because of the growing population of Brevard County. And one of my questions was it going to be 5 and 2? My only other thing that I want to throw out there is just to see if it sticks to anything is has there been any talk about having one school board represent charter schools? You know, and I'm from public schools. I'm a union member, but I also believe in choice. And when you have school choice, you also need to have that representation.
There has not been, but I think that's a great idea.
So to have that added onto it or just looked at for discussion, okay? Because I like to see parents have choice, but when you have more parents and people want more choices for school, this and that, I think there needs to be representation also, even though I might disagree with charter schools, okay? But when it comes down to the Constitution that we serve, we need to look at representation on that. That's just throwing out that there, sir. Thank you.
Any questions on that? All right, next we have Katie Delaney.
I went and checked that superintendents, they do have a vote when there's not a quorum. So that's how it is right now. But about this proposal, I'm not really in favor of adding more government officials to the roles. Yeah, I'm not in favor of that. But, and I did want to comment on the charter school thing. I don't know if that's possible because of their autonomy from the school district, because I have my kids in charter school and I've had issues in charter schools. So I've tried to go to the school district with those issues, and they clearly have told me there is autonomy with discipline, with all these different things. So I don't know how that would work, because there's also private, companies and whatnot. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Delaney. All right, we're now on the proposal. Are there questions or comments on this idea about adding 2 school board members? Mr. Tredis.
Okay, I'll read section 1001.34. I'm just going to read the relevant part. Quote, each district school board shall be composed of not less than 5 members. A district school board may modify the number of members on its board by adopting a resolution that establishes the total number of members on the board, which may not be less than 5, and the number of members who shall be elected by residence areas or elected at large. If the resolution is adopted, the school board shall submit to the electors for approval at a referendum held at the next primary or general election the question of whether the number of school board members should be modified in accordance with the resolution adopted by the school board. So to me, this is another example of legislative preemption.
right, Ms. Schmidt, do you want to comment on? No. Anybody? I'm sorry. Mr. Oliver, I'm sorry.
You know, it just seems like from what we've heard today, I'm not sure if it's 5 or 7 or 9, it solves the problem, adding more people in there. If we're not getting votes on by the school board members on some of the policies that are there, does adding 2 more to the stew fix that problem? You know, but I'm open to the debate and hearing more about it.
Yeah, I think the logic was the fact that the 2 are elected countywide as opposed to single-member district might change, you know, the results, so to speak. So.
All right, further debate. All right, there's any objection to moving this idea forward for further consideration next time?
I don't have any objection, but could I ask that Mr. Googleman give his opinion on whether 1001.3 floor statute preempts this proposal?
Mr. Googleman, for giving you more work. Congratulations. All right. So
Yes,
without
and
objection.
I have no desire to try to write. I have no long-term aspirations that statute will be overturned. So. Yeah.
All right. So we're moving forward with number 23. All right. Our final consideration for tonight is by Jordan Chandler. The add section 1.9 to Article 1, establishing workforce housing trust fund. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To give some historical context and background and insight to the crafting of this particular proposal, this is something I've been working on for approximately about 7 months. And in the crafting of this proposal, had the opportunity to speak with several, I would say numerous, maybe 16 affordable housing organizations and experts here in Brevard County and throughout the state of Florida to get a better understanding of what the need is within our communities. And my wife is here tonight, so she can probably attest to all the time that I spent on this particular proposal. Also had the opportunity to speak to county staff to examine the current Affordable Housing Trust, which was established by ordinance in 2007. In that current Affordable Housing Initiative Trust Fund, the current funding that is currently in there is what you call PILT funds, which is payment in lieu of taxes. And so sat down with them and to examine what funding is currently being allocated to that, which is the PILT funds, but also gathered some information from them relative to how we could enhance our efforts to establish a trust fund that will actually work for the people of Brevard County. Also had done my due diligence in researching and reviewing how counties and municipalities in Florida and the U.S. in general have made strides to address this critical need, and more especially what funding sources that they applied to make sure that their trust fund was adequately funded and sustainable to serve the purposes in which it was created. And then lastly, I might add also the commissioner who appointed me has made this process fruitful by giving me full support behind this initiative. So the proposal that I submitted really looks to do a few things. Number one, create a trust fund that focuses on workforce housing opportunities within Brevard. And so, mind you, these are the people who are the very backbone of our community, right? They're teachers, first responders, government staff, individuals who work in hospitality and the tourism industry, all of which who play really an essential role in the development, the growth, the financial wellness, the safety and security of our community. Secondly, this proposal also focuses on a supportive housing aspect, and in essence, that's those who are the least of thee. Simply, it's a combination of housing and supportive services designed to help stabilize people who face complex challenges. People like, our veterans, for example, right? Individuals who go overseas and fight for our country but come home not to find a country fighting for them. This proposal also represents those thousands of students and families who currently live in poverty. And if you don't believe me, I encourage you to look at the Children's Hunger Project statistics. And so this proposal, this trust fund's purpose is to have a dedicated fund that is exclusively used for the purposes that it was created for it to be reoccurring and adequate enough to be able to really chip away at addressing the critical need that is plaguing our county and our nation. And I would close with saying this, Mr. Chair, as someone who is a young adult, and I'm pretty sure Ms. Rogerson can also attest to this, I quite often think about what I want my community to look like 20 to 30 years from now, right? And as cliche as it may sound, I want it to be a great place to live, to work, and to play. But the fact of the matter is that with this inflationary period that we're in, and unfortunately it's only going to continue to get worse if we don't address the problem at hand. But that slogan that I just threw out for you would simply be nothing more than a slogan of the past. And so open to any questions that you might have.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. We have a few appearance cards before we get into the debate up here. Robert, sorry, I still can't read your handwriting. Robert K. from Melbourne. Thanks, Robert.
Good evening. Good evening to you, Chair Herodopoulos, and to the board. I'm here to speak on this proposal, but the reason I'm here is homelessness and the workforce housing crisis. The crisis has been hastened by inflationary spending, deficit spending, or simply spending other people's money. So short of a voluntary participatory budget system where we can completely eliminate extorting other people's money by ridding ourselves of federal and state funds, which is backed by a central banking system called the Federal Reserve. So I'll start off with this little bit of a background information. In 1802, Thomas Jefferson proclaimed that if the American people allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. I think that's what we're dealing with right now. So some bullet points here. 1913 Federal Reserve Act and Income Tax Act. 71, the Bretton Woods gold standard that tied our U.S. dollar to the scarcity of gold was removed. In 1980s, you saw speculation in the housing market. 90s and 2000, you kind of see the end of that with what I would call the movie The Big Short with Christian Bale talking about how S&P and Moody AAA rated bonding, housing bonds that ballooned and bubbled the housing market to the point of the recession. And then after that, you had a whole bunch of developers in large companies buy those low-priced houses and inflate the renting market to where we are now, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So we fast forward today, and Blackstone is now the largest commercial landlord. I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Chandler for drafting this. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody's bringing up this issue, and it needs to be brought up. So to open up dialogue, discourse, diatribe, or discussion is the best thing to do. And the immediate issue at hand is homelessness and workforce housing. We have a disproportionate number of homeless and vulnerable families to the level of crisis, and reactive management has, as evidenced by the BOCC's meeting last week, which outlawed First Amendment protected right, which was narrowly viewed and as it did not implement prior less restrictive free speech measures to curb the alleged and anecdotal public safety issue. So we have to deal with this. And in order to deal with this proposal sets up a trust. Allowing for the funding from the general fund, Brevard County has the opportunity to receive federal funding to set up a trust that would provide an effective and sustainable revenue source for the immediate future. Now, like I said, I don't think that federal or state funds or other people's money should help, but instead of caging people for what we're doing right now, we're caging them for being out on the streets. We have to do something. This proposal is the only thing that's been moved. Now, with that, there comes a section with one more minute, please.
Sure, go ahead.
With best practices. And according to the Florida Housing Coalition, they ranked in order the best practices according to the Florida Community Land Initiative. They list the same best practices as first setting up a community land trust, then setting up a trust such as this one. So a community land trust basically allows for Brevard County to own the land that it's subsidizing the housing on and then lease out that land at a 99-year lease rate so that it can retain those subsidies. So say that I'm a recipient of the subsidized housing or whatever case that you're using for taking the federal money or state money and giving it to me at a lower rate. I buy the house for $150,000, but the market assessed value is $250,000. without a CLT, from my understanding with the language that's involved here, I would own the land and the house at $250,000 market value, although I've only paid maybe $125,000 to $150,000 because it was subsidized. So if that's the case, the Brevard County, when I sell that house, I retain the money, they then have to build another house, but they lose that subsidy. So it could lead to unintended consequences, and I think that the provision under Land Trust Beneficiaries, section Florida Statute 689-.071, it states that a land trust is not the same as a community land trust. They're similar, but they're not the same. One actually allows for the fiduciary to be different.
Well, I think you made your point. I think we hear you loud and clear. We need to let other folks come up with their 3 minutes. So we have 2 more bites of the apple if this moves forward. Thank you so much. Yeah. Ms. Castellano, you're recognized.
Yeah, you did it.
Right. Better handwriting here.
That's probably on me. So thank you. First of all, since I have 3 minutes and I won't take 3 minutes, I never had the time to say this, thank you all for saying yes when your county commissioner asked you to do this job. I've watched you all. I haven't agreed with everything, but I know it's taken a lot of your time and your passion and your dedication to our county, and I have to say thank you. I have some questions for Mr. Chandler. First of all, I'm so excited that you've decided to embrace this because, as you and I have talked about, this is such a huge issue affecting us, our entire country, and especially here in Brevard County. But I'd like to see your proposal put in writing where the funding, you say it's in the email that you forwarded to the Brevard Justice League, you said that the funding would be required, but it's not in the proposal. So I'd like to see that, actually where that funding would be required. And I'd like to know also the difference between this and our current trust fund and how much money is currently in our current trust fund so that we know that that money is going to go to the needs, which is my third question. I don't see anything that shows a guarantee of the percentage of this housing that will go to low income or no income housing needs.
Yeah, so you may need to repeat those back to me as we go along.
I've got them written down, so I can.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the proposal, I believe it's section B, the purposes of the trust fund. To answer your first question, the purpose of the trust fund is to provide for a continuing non-lapsing fund for the Brevard County Commission to use to address affordable housing within Brevard County. And so the funding sources are outlined here, revenue sources that the county commission could potentially pull from. But to answer your first question, it is a reoccurring non-lapsing fund. And so what currently exists, as I indicated, is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, as I stated, which was established by ordinance in 2007. So you're looking at 15 years down the road and, really what has been done. And so per ordinance, the ordinance states that the only funding source that shall be allocated to that fund is what you call PILT funds, which is payment in lieu of taxes. So that's a check that the county gets for taxes that were lost by taxes that were not included on the roll. So I don't know what your third question was. I'm sorry.
So back to the first one. I want to see that language in the proposal, in the amendment before it goes to the voters, because right now it says we could fund it through these different things, but there's no requirement to fund it through any one source, and there's no dollar amount tied to that I could see. Now, I could be missing it. We could fund it at $1. The Sandusky Trust Fund, we've already seen what happens when we don't have it very clearly outlined where that money comes from, where it has to go. My third question was I'd like to see something to show that the trust funds are going to go to those in the greatest need, and how that would be determined. It's just the first reading. Just want to throw that out there that you can flesh those in there. That would be awesome.
Yeah. There are some agreements that are also outlined in this proposal. And so for individuals or developments or development organizations, or whatever the case may be, that want to solicit funds from this particular proposal, obviously, number one, if it were developers, you would have to show your site plans or development agreement plans to show that you're actually going to be using those dollars for the purposes in which it was intended for. But I hear you. To be honest, I think that this is pretty comprehensive, but if it does move forward, I think we can take into consideration your concerns.
I'm not on the panel, so you and I can talk outside too. And I thank you. Again, I know your intention, and please forgive me my distrust of the ability to follow through sometimes when people have great intentions, and some of the people that fall through the cracks are the ones that don't show up to vote and don't show up to complain. So thank you.
Hey, thanks for your time. All right, we have Katie Delaney.
I had a question. Is this transitional housing, or is this like where people can buy the housing at a lower rate through government subsidies?
So in essence, it would be really a combination of both. So you would have workforce housing, but also supportive housing for vulnerable families. So in constructing this proposal, something that I've seen that other municipalities as well as counties have done is the dollars that they have within their trust fund, they typically have purchased something like an abandoned apartment complex or a hotel, then which they turn into a transitional period. So that, in essence, would fall under the category of really supportive housing.
Okay. So I remember reading about in Salt Lake City, there was a plan to help veterans, homeless veterans, get, housing and kind of help restart their lives, which I think that that's phenomenal. We're the richest country in the world. I feel like we should be able to take care of people in need. My only concern is I also feel like there should be a time limit on that. It shouldn't just be an endless handout. There should be, however many years or whatever that, to make sure that the taxpayers' money isn't just going perpetually forever to one family. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, no questions. All right, we've reached the end of the appearance cards on our last item. Are there questions for Mr. Chandler?
I have one.
Mr. Travis, for a question.
Mr. Chandler, I do not see in the definitions section a definition for residential density equivalent unit. Could you say what that is?
Yes, sir. So the definition section, this is actually something I worked on with county staff, but if you see Section A of the proposal, see Section 62-6301, definitions of Brevard County Code of Ordinances pertaining to the definitions of workforce and affordable housing. So that particular language is not specifically identified within the proposal. That's because I just, in essence, indicated that you can find that language within the current Code of County Ordinances.
And it's in there?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
Say it again.
What is it?
62-6301.
No, what is it? What is a residential density equivalent unit? Because it seems to me it's really important, because I'm looking at paragraph E1, and it says that the Board of County Commissioners shall adopt procedures for the Housing and Human Services Department to disperse trust funds and residential density equivalent units. To me, that means density beyond what is zoned. Is that what you think it is?
Mr. Tredis, I can definitely look that up and have it at the next meeting.
Because if it is, to me, that's just like democracy being defeated, because a government employee, I know there's procedures supposed to follow, but a government employee determines density, and that's it. I mean, that's a way to ruin a neighborhood, because the Housing and Human Service Department comes in and says, we're going to let you build 100 units on this 2-acre lot instead of what's zoned now for 20. That's the way I read it.
Yeah.
Do you read it differently?
Well, like I said, I can definitely review that information and have it at the next meeting. And as outlined in the proposal, there's definitely oversight, which is really 3 layers. Number one, you would have the county commission, who would then have oversight over the funding that's allocated to the trust fund. Then you would have the Housing and Human Services Department, who obviously would continue to follow statutory or state guidelines in enacting or dispersing those funds. And then also per state statute, in my conversation with some of the individuals in the Housing and Human Services Department. There would have to be an advisory board, if you would, which would more than likely be the Affordable Housing Council, who would then make recommendations to the county commission as to, if the trust fund needs to be improved in any shape, form, or fashion. But back to it, Mr. Tredis, I can definitely review that information and have it to you at the next meeting.
Okay, and my other question is, with the last speaker, I'm not seeing any dedicated source of money to this trust fund, so I'm wondering, okay, I guess it is different. You've explained how this order. I was going to ask, how is it different from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that already exists? And I think you've explained that because that only has one dedicated funding source.
Correct.
But this proposal doesn't have a dedicated funding source either. It just lays out options for the county commission, which they already have. Correct? I mean, they could amend the Affordable Housing Trust Fund they have now in any way they want, correct?
Which hasn't been done in 15 years. And so, obviously, Mr. Tredis, what you just indicated, that ordinances can be repealed and replaced at any time. But in 15 years, that hasn't been done. That has not been the case. But you know that a charter amendment is much more concrete and that you must abide by it. And so, as I outlined in here, you have several funding sources for the county commission to consider, but also, as outlined in bullet point 5 of revenue sources. Give me just one second here. It says other sources as established by ordinance. So there's a litany of things that the county commission can enact by ordinance to allocate additional funding to this trust fund.
Okay, but could, if this were to pass, the county commission could say, okay, it's on the books, we're not going to fund or do anything with it. That could certainly happen, right?
Sorry, repeat your question.
If this were to pass and become part of the charter, the county commission could decide to not do anything to fund it. Is that correct?
No, sir. So, once again, in the Section B, purposes of the trust fund, the purpose of the trust fund is to provide a continuing non-lapsing fund for the Brevard County Commission to use to address the need for affordable housing within Brevard County. So the way I currently read is that the county, on a continuous basis, annually, would need to allocate dollars, whether it be from their, the funding sources that I outlined there. So the county would need to address it.
Well, I'll tell you my opinion on it is the language gives them the option to do that, but there's nothing requiring them to do anything.
I'm sorry, it's hard hearing you. Can you?
My reading of it is the language gives the county commission the option to fund it, but they don't have to. I mean, the purpose, okay, great, we have a purpose, and the county commission say, okay, that's the purpose, and we're not going to fund this. And it could be on the books for, 6 years from now, when the next charter review commission is, this was never funded. I see that as a possibility. I don't see anything in here requiring the county commission to do anything to fund this. I know that you said the purpose, but purpose isn't funding.
Well, Mr. Tredis, once again, I, don't necessarily agree with that interpretation of it. So,
okay.
I mean, I think to me, it's pretty clear.
He's going to use the citizen advisory protocol in the charter to encourage them to do that and force them to take a vote.
All right, other questions for Mr. Chandler? Mr. Oliver, quick question. Okay. All right, it's getting late. Okay, we are, okay, so other further questions? I would just, I dealt with the Sadowski funds for years, so I think it might be helpful as people try to digest this. This is a big idea, that you might kind of walk through maybe the last 10 years, how much money has Brevard County received, how do you qualify for the money of the current law, and this is why we need more. We all recognize housing prices are up, et cetera. It would help, I think, everyone digest this a little bit better if you kind of walk through this is what's currently happening, and how this change would impact and enhance the funding and to who it would go to. Just even if it's a really elementary look at it, I think that'd be helpful, Mr. Chandler, as we digest this, as we think about it next time.
Yeah, and I think, my apologies, and I think a question was asked earlier as to how much funding was currently in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And in my research a few months ago, at that particular time, it was about $300,000. So.
Again, I'd like to look at, because I know during the COVID crisis that Brevard County had a lot of money to hand out to folks And again, how that differs with Sadowski might be a whole nother matter, but, all right, are there any other questions? So without objection, we'll move this to the next meeting. We've eliminated a few things on our items thus far. We'll get through that. I think there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, I think 6 or 7 things, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we were kind of going through, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Proposal number 2 was voted down or removed. Proposal number 9, proposal 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16.
That's correct. That's what I have down. Okay.
That's what we have then. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, well, I appreciate everyone's patience. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, we have more things. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Let me get back to our... Okay, under unfinished business, future meeting schedule. First, and then we'll get into it. Robert, did you have an additional public comment you want to make? Section I? Okay, we're not there yet, okay. Under unfinished business, I think where we're at right now, we've eliminated some of these proposals. We've gone from 24 down, I think 17 or so. So hopefully we'll be able to manage it. At this time, I don't think we should call for additional meetings unless someone would like to do that. No? Great. Okay, under new business, Mr. Tredis, a motion for additional rules of procedure. You're recognized.
This is a motion to add a rule 18 rules of procedure, which would have the commission's attorney write the ballot caption and ballot language or question to be answered for any proposal passed by the commission. Right now, people submit proposals, and that's the wording of the charter, but what is critically important is what is going to be the ballot summary and the ballot caption. That's what the voters are going to look at and decide whether they're going to vote yes or no on any proposal. And right now, there's no provision for anyone to write it. I don't know how it's been written in the past. I don't think it's been written very well. I can tell you that, in my opinion, because on the 3-attorney review panel, which was part of Mr. Gugelman's memo on that, there was a copy of the ballot, and the summary described it as a review panel. There shall be a review panel for proposals, is what it said. It didn't say it was a 3 attorneys, didn't say that 2 of 3, if they voted that it was consistent with state law, that it would go to the voters. It didn't say any of that. So I think it was very misleading. And I think it's really important that any proposal that comes out of this commission has a well-written, accurate summary in the ballot and an accurate ballot caption. And I think Mr. Gugelman, or the commission attorney for future commissions, would be the one to do that, because I think whoever the attorney is, would work for the commission, and I think they could write it in a neutral manner. I don't think that a commissioner should actually write it, because it would become too argumentative and biased. I know if I got the opportunity to write a ballot summary and ballot language, it would be argumentative, because I'd want it to pass. Would it be neutral? Probably not. It would be argumentative, okay? But I think Mr. Gugelman would be able to accurately reflect what the proposal is. If we don't have anything like this, I don't know who writes it. Maybe it goes to the county commission, and then probably, I guess, to the county attorney, I guess. Or maybe the supervisor election writes it. I don't want either of those folks writing it. We're the commission. Our people, our attorney, should write the ballot language and the caption. I think we can have input to the attorney, but I think it should be an independent person working for us who writes it. So that's my proposal. I agree, and I'll second.
All right, the proposal's in front of us. Any debate on that?
Call the question, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a good one.
Okay, any objection? Seeing no objection, show that adopted. All right, we're now.
Welcome to the Florida Senate.
I didn't see any objection. Did any object? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think.
Just as a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
I have already talked with the county attorney's office about putting together resolutions that could be dispatched to the county commission for all of your proposals, which would follow the appropriate county form and would include ballot language. So, and we're coordinating with the county attorney's office already.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have one last item, that is public comment. Robert Klimkowski, want to make public comment? Welcome back. Thank you.
Keep it brief as possible. All right, I'll just continue where I left off. I'm going to be speaking on the previous topic. An ordinance is not necessary to partner with the NGO that I was talking about, that community land trust. And that community land trust, if we were to establish it, then and this trust, it should be sunset. So the sunset provision and design it up to be as voluntary or free market as possible, that it does not rely on federal and state funding to match and sustain the trust. Incentivizing affordable housing by waiver or stagnant impact fees have proven inadequate. The current fund we have has no mechanism to generate realistic and actionable revenue. It's insolvent and you really can't do anything with it. So after its incorporation, the bylaws of the Community Land Trust can be drafted and add environmental development best practices, such as low impact development as a mechanism to start proactive asset management instead of reactive crisis management. Designing and innovating the way that Brevard has been dealing with the disaster that is Indian River Lagoon, restoration needs to be enacted as if now we start, it could possibly sunset the Sorrel tax and save taxpayers money in the future. So first, this NGO that has acquired the land can leverage their SHIP and their federal money to actually gain and garner private consensual funding so they can borrow money from private companies if they have a CLT set up. These assets are leveraged and sources are derived from the CLT's ability to retain these lands in their portfolio as long-term investments. This is titled Taxpayer Initiative, How to Save Taxpayers Money Using CLTs. Second, to transfer as much of the revenue burden on free market solutions as possible. Now this is going to be from me. From their point of my point would be to transfer the revenue burden onto free market solutions such as those that are included in their bylaws and in the language that they set up. So if a company wants to build affordable housing, they have to have in their bylaws set up that they're going to be altruistic and they have to have business model and systemic language that shows that. Third, we would be able to sustain this fund long-term by an initiative called phase in, phase out sunset provision. It's something I just coined in transferring that federal and state burden from then the county to the private sector to the already subsidized 501c3s and organizations around here that are already getting subsidized. They're not paying taxes. And if they're going to operate as a business, a lot of them don't, but some of them do. If they're going to operate as a business, then they should pay their fair share. If not, then as a 501c3, as a church, they need to be helping out the homeless population, not the county. And last, I'll say this. I will end with this. Proactive asset management would be ideal, yet instead we are burdened with reactive crisis management. Please pass this bill as a response to a crisis, which is the only answer we've heard, yet caveat with a CLT to hedge against market manipulation.
I think
Thank
there's
you.
a question for you too.
Yeah, so I'm intrigued because you mentioned the Federal Reserve the first time you spoke and the inflation and all of that. So is this proposal, it sounds like it's been crafted by a think tank, or can you give me any additional context?
I did it at 2 a.m. last night.
Okay,
I just found out about this last night, and I saw it, and I'm like, is there any unintended consequences? Every time I've been coming up here to speak, I look at any bill, any ordinance, and say, unfortunately, government, what's their angle? But I didn't see one here, and I wanted to speak on behalf of Mr. Chandler here. I thought it was a great first draft, the first presentation, but I think that CLT is the way to go. No think tank has helped. I do think that they have.
No, and I'm not saying that's a knock against you. I'm just curious, in terms of background, that's all.
Yeah, Seminole County, Manatee County, and 4 other counties have already drafted workforce housing, and I did look through all of their comprehensive plans, and I did find the answer for you, population density. There's actually AGUs, or accrued rates, and at 144 homes, if they build 144 homes, 8 of those homes have to be allowed to be in that area. They also can do an additional unit, so that's like a granny flat. If it's a condo, they can build on that unit. What I would worry about there, though, is critical mass infrastructure like the Satellite Beach area, if you're leaving that area, or anywhere that has a barrier island.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Klimkowski.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. All right, we have reached the end of our agenda, And any other comments for the good of the order? All right, Ms. Schmidt, again, you're on, moves your eyes.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.